RotoGrinders, welcome back. NFL Pick 6 show, week number 6. Rich Hribar, sharp football analysis. John Daigle, 444 Sports, two of the best in the business when it comes to daily fantasy football analysis in general. Wednesday night, 9 o'clock. You know what time it is. It's the Pick 6 show. We're past the quarter poll officially. We got to talk about our listener league debacle in a second. We'll do that in a second. Of course, this is your first time here. You're not aware how this show goes down. What took you so long to find us? And secondly, Pick 6. We focus on three main games for the main slate. And then after that, we talk about our favorite quarterbacks, running backs, tight ends, and receivers in the games we've not yet talked about. It's an 11-game main slate because only two teams are on bye. It's the Packers and Pittsburgh. Another game in London. It's not Jacksonville. It's Baltimore and Tennessee. Rich Hribar.
Mercifully, the last one for a few weeks.
Is it? I thought this was like a normal thing going forward.
I think week 9. I think week 9. There's a Germany game. I think there's 2 more left. There's a Germany game and another early one. But yeah, every week we don't need a 9:30 a.m. football game, and shout out to my West Coast people that get up at 6 a.m. and watch this miserable product.
It's Baltimore, Tennessee this week. So you got to be a real, Tennessee is not the most fun to watch. Baltimore has their moments. Lamar Jackson had a lot of drop passes last week. I'm sure people are probably putting that loss at him, but it feels like he could have thrown for 3 or 4 touchdowns. If you're
the Ravens better. Last week was pretty great. It was a pretty good time.
Yeah. All right, Rich, how are things in your world? Week 6, 2 buys, Green Bay and Pittsburgh, an 11-game main slate. No teams, no totals as far as this slate above 50, none above 49. 48.5 is the highest we got on a Wednesday night. What are we looking at? What's the screenshot as far as week 6?
Yeah, a lot of pretty gross games on the surface. We've got our first weather week watch. So Kevin Roth, the best Boys to Men karaoke singer in the business, will have his work cut out for him this week. We'll have to be following him late in the week because it looks like the East Coast is going to have some terrible weather. Daigle's in Chicago, so we'll get the update on Sunday morning from him. You can ask me if you care about what PJ Walker is going to do. I can let you know how the weather is in Cleveland live, but we'll get some boots on the ground. But yeah, it's a lot of one-sided games, not like the sexiest slate for in terms of firepower, back and forth shootouts.
And we've had some injuries as well too.
And the Giants are on primetime again this week, guys.
It's incredible. It's amazing.
John, what's your thoughts? And a couple of things you threw out there, Rich, and obviously Wednesday night things aren't fully developed, but the PJ Walker situation, I guess the Watson situation in Cleveland is so bizarre because supposedly, coach said hey, he's cleared and good to go 2 weeks ago, and he didn't want to play. They threw in the rookie from UCLA. That was a complete disaster. He's not practicing back from the bye. Who knows what's happening there in Cleveland? 37.5 is the total in that game. San Fran is the favorite.
And the 49ers have scored 30 or more points in 8 straight games in the regular season. But like I said, that one has huge weather stuff that's already been baked in. So there's just a lot going on.
You could kind of foresee something coming too. Whenever they told everyone who their backup was on Monday, I was like, oh, we're going here already. Something behind the scenes has to be going down, but I have not pinpointed it yet.
Yeah, what do we think? Is it just Watson doesn't want to play and the team thinks he should play, and that's that? Is that sort of where we're at? And this doesn't seem like a fun game to come back to. If you're not 100%, do you want to play against San Fran's defense and get walloped? Probably not.
I've just never heard Kevin Stefanski throw players under the bus in his entire tenure there. And last week, whenever he had his post-game presser, he even specifically mentioned Watson and said our medical team cleared him. It was up to him whether he played. It's oh, okay. It's week 5 and we're already here with this contract. So we'll see.
Week 5 of year 1 of a 5 or 6 year contract. I guess
all guaranteed, right? Too. So you can't really escape it.
Yeah. And I'm sure Watson's teammates are probably, who knows? It's probably not a great situation in that locker room as well.
Did you guys see that picture of David Njoku, man? Finally revealed of his face burns?
Oh no! I only saw when he walked into the.
Dude, I can't believe he played 2 weeks ago, the day after. Like, everyone was talking about like he wore that mask into the building, and everyone was like, obviously giving their takes about the mask. But like, he posted a picture of his actual like the burns, and
wow.
I can't believe that dude played.
Especially because
right there,
even there, look at that. Especially because even today, like Wednesday after their bye, he was DMP. Like they said, oh, like he can't even practice right now. It's like, how did he play a game the next day?
He was the only dude that played good in that game too for the Browns.
He's high targets.
By the way, we mentioned weather, Daigle. Obviously we'll keep an eye on this, but I know Rich mentioned this before the show. Minnesota, Chicago? I guess that would have been the highest total on the board. It started at 49.5, and it's already tumbled down to 44.5.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, we'll see what chief meteorologist Kevin Roth has to say, and I guess I don't know if you'll go.
Even tomorrow it's supposed to be bad too. Like the Chiefs game's supposed to be bad.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Chiefs, Denver is going to get walloped. They should at least.
Here in Chicago, like I went for a run earlier, but we're now expecting rain every night through Monday. And outside of Washington, Chicago is notoriously has like the worst field conditions, especially when it's rain or snow. So it's probably not going to be pretty, even though there were some fun plays in that one.
Yeah, we'll still talk about it because it's Wednesday and stuff happens. But
yeah.
This isn't like a pick show, but I remember I said, kind of our little conversation. The Bears, I know who wants to bet on the Bears. Minnesota's a disaster as well. They lost Jefferson, of course. Just knowing nothing else, like if it's the field's going to be a complete mess, it's going to be a mud bowl or whatever you want to call it. Give me the quarterback with legs, Fields, versus the quarterback with no legs and 2.5 points. I don't know. Just
I mean, obviously everyone's going to remember the Fields Trey Lance monsoon game that kicked off last season, but how are Vikings fans feeling? What was better? The Vikings, they were the worst best team last year, and now they're probably the best worst team, like the best bad team this year.
Yeah, and other rumors out there they're stirring as far as Cousins getting traded. I know that was a thought.
It's the NFL. I never count on anything cool happening. My son has informed me that he is out on the Giants unless they trade Saquon Barkley. Then he'll understand that the team's moving in the right direction.
Who's trading for Saquon Barkley? Did you want to explain that to him?
He said the Ravens. He said the Ravens are trading for him. That's who he told me to tell you.
Did you tell him what you just told us, that nothing cool happens in the NFL?
Yeah, I did. I explained to him that nothing cool happens in the NFL.
Although cool? I thought that tweet Schefter sent out the moment after Jefferson was put on IR, mentioning that with the Vikings still losing, like we may have seen Jefferson for the last time in a while. I was like, well, that's pretty suspicious. Like literally the moment Jefferson goes out, Schefter's now sending tweets like that.
Speaking of sending tweets, and we'll get into our games in a second, but John, didn't you tweet out that like you were speculating that Richardson and Jefferson, you got to keep them on your bench, but they're not going to play again this season? Richardson out, a month to 2 months, Jefferson on IL, and we'll see what Minnesota's record is by the time if he is ever available to come back. Are they just possibly done for the year? Is that you're speculating there?
Perhaps, but with those two guys on a lot of my rosters, I mean, I looked at them because I already ran through waivers last night and today for the high stakes leagues, and it's only week 6. There's zero chance I'm dropping like Justin Jefferson right now, even if I don't think he comes back, given that he doesn't have the long-term extension that he's been trying to get just yet. So there's really no reason for him to rush back, especially if the Vikings are a losing team. I don't have the courage to drop him. I'm not giving him to someone else in week 14 of the fantasy playoffs. So I just have to look at that roster spot and burn it pretty much.
Is there no IL spot in your league?
Now, in those FFPC, NFFC.
No, there's nothing. Yeah, not those.
There's no IRs. And then IRs are usually for home leagues, but I'm in a lot of leagues that just don't have it.
Gotcha.
But
you gotta make hard decisions when you're gonna play for 500 KD, and you gotta make hard decisions.
I guess so. Yeah,
we've talked about it on this show before, Dean. I'm in full support of short benches, no IR, because you want everyone in your league to make choices to keep everyone engaged. Like right now, I'm looking at like start sits between Rachaad White and Latavius Murray. And like Latavius Murray might actually outscore him. Like, what if I just want to drop Rachaad White for just a stash, but I have deeper benches, so I don't have to? Make someone in your league cut him, because there are also people in your league who will take Rachaad White's 15 touches, although they go nowhere, and say, I have to start him because I have nothing else. Force those choices.
Did you drop Deontay Johnson like a month ago?
Absolutely not, because the IR lined up with the bye week. So He missed 4 games. Then they had a bye week, so we had 2 weeks to heal post 4-game absence. It just made too much sense.
All right. Later on in the show, maybe we'll get the update on your fab bids. When do they come in? They usually kind of like when our show closes, you sort of find out if you got your stuff.
I think it's at 10 Eastern, right?
Yeah, it's usually I send them out like when we get done with the show, but they come in when we're wrapping up, the movie at hour 2.5 or whatever the hell we get into. It's a fun week though, honestly, for everyone in redraft because you got all these bums available like Amari DiMercado. All these guys we're thinking about paying down for in DFS this week. They're all pretty much on the waiver wire, so just a fun week to shuffle through.
Yeah. This is our first like DFS punt running back week where like all the dudes are in play, like all the injuries.
Are we sure Ingram's not the number 1 running back there in Arizona? I guess we'll talk about it. I suppose they're both super cheap, and that's one of the 3 games we're going to focus on. The very first game we have is Seattle. Seattle. It's at Cincinnati. Cincinnati 3-point favorite. 45.5 is the total. We saw Jamar Chase get loose and break the slate last game. All of a sudden, Joe Burrow looked pretty good as well. Matchup here in Seattle looks pretty good. One of the more appealing games on the slate. John, I'll let you handle this one. Cincinnati and Seattle, wherever you want to start, go for it.
And I believe it was Rich last week who mentioned that the Cardinals to this point really haven't changed their defense. Even in Philadelphia, didn't change their defense under Jonathan Gannon. So we wondered if they were just going to play Burrow softer. And they only blitzed him on 15 snaps total, but it was still somewhat the same thing where when he was clean, so upright from a clean pocket, he actually completed 33 of 41 passes for 309 yards against Arizona. But under pressure, it was more of the same, getting rid of the ball quickly as possible. 3 of 5 for only 1.6 yards per attempt, although 2 of his touchdowns did come in that quick time from snap to throw. So it's really just a question mark of, can the Seahawks get pressure here? Because we have to almost cancel out what they and every team do against the Giants. Like, that's not the Seahawks pass rush, 11 sacks every week. They were 18th in pressure rate. So league average, respectable, heading into that Giants game. And then, of course, wrapped it up and moved into 11th overall through week 5. But right now, over the bye week, we do know they got healthier. They're getting Tariq Woolen back. They're getting Devin Witherspoon back. Jamal Adams is supposed to be out of concussion protocol and play this game too. So it's really just a question of, can their coverage create more pass rush? And if Burrow is under duress, is he truly back to normal? He made a couple of plays in that Cardinals game where I thought, oh, I'm about to get buried. And Burrow, Chase, single stacks did end up winning the spy and the double spy for sure, just because of how a little bit more mobile Burrow was. So that's kind of what I'm asking myself. We all know Chase is going to be played into very high ownership in this slate, but if the Seahawks can get a pass rush going here, then we have a reason to believe this total maybe comes under.
So just top of the head, a tough question for you, John. Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase. Anybody clearly the favorite amongst those 3?
Gosh, I know. And add Calvin Ridley there too. We're going to have to make decisions this week at the top. But I like Cooper Kupp. We'll get there eventually. I'm kind of hoping T. Higgins plays. Maybe even though that would mean we get Chase at lower ownership. But I'm trying to find reasons off of Chase, even though it's probably the dumbest decision. Because even when you run early optimals, I'm sure Chase comes up in genuinely 100% of them.
He doesn't, because we're leaning toward Cooper Kupp, who's cheaper, who's got a slightly bigger projection. I will tell you, at quarterback, Joe Burrow is hitting the most optimals. It's pretty flat, though. 22% for Burrow, 17% for Stafford, 16% Lawrence, 11% Fields.
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised, like you, with Chase. I thought Chase would be more popular. He's going to be as the week progresses, as value opens up. And he's hitting 18%, which is not nothing. But Kupp's hitting 25%, and Marquise Brown is still too cheap, so he's hitting the most at 33%. And Adam Thielen has just been amazing. And I guess he's the clear and obvious run back if you're playing Miami, which is a weird sentence to say, but he's just incredible as far as the back door, Adam Thielen. Jump in here, Rich, as far as your thoughts on the Bengals offense, and feel free to pivot to the other side.
Yeah, I don't want to say that the Bengals need another prove it week, because we obviously know Joe Burrow's a really good football player. But I don't really trust anything that happened against the Arizona Cardinals. And we're going to talk about the Cardinals again. This Cardinals defense, they're exactly who we thought they were coming into the season. And that's the one thing, because the Cowboys have played all these weird game scripts, but I can't shake it out of my head that the Cowboys couldn't do anything against this Cardinals defense. So thankfully we don't have to talk about that, but that game was in the main slate. Maybe we're going to talk about it, but I do want to see the Bengals kind of run it back and have this and be as effective a passing game against the Seattle defense. Because we've kind of chased it around other weeks, like against the Titans, and they couldn't pass block. So I just want to see a little bit more. I'm not going to necessarily, no pun intended, chase it, but Chase is fine himself. He's just been soaking up so many targets. Like when you have a player as good as Jamar Chase, even if there's some volatility, you're just going to take a guy that's getting 33%, 43% target shares, right? Like, he had a 43% target share. Like, you're just going to throw that at the wall. Who cares, right? So you're gonna chase that. But I mean, tougher matchup here, obviously, with Tariq Woolen back. Devin Witherspoon played. They moved him to the slot. They got Artie Burns off the field in week 4 because they didn't play last week. Obviously, it was against the Giants, so we don't really know like how effective anything was. So we'll find out some truth there too. But we should have a high pass volume game because the Seahawks are a pass funnel defense right now. Like their run D has been consistently good the opening month of the season. Teams are attempting 41.3 passes per game against them. Burrow also has thrown 40 or more passes in 3 of his past 4 games. They're just living in this shotgun world. And it's actually hurt their run game. I swear to God, if I ever try to play Joe Mixon again in DFS, you have to just talk me out of it. Like, if you do everything within your power. This dude had 29 of 31 touches last week and still couldn't get there. Or, he's getting stoned in the goal line because they can't run from under center. Because Burrow doesn't play under center. Did he get 4 consecutive
goal line carries? I feel like I was watching the game. I think he had 4 consecutive goal line carries, and I'm like, and you have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. They're supposed to be pretty good.
They can't run from under center. Everything's out of shotgun, and so like they can't. They have like no like downhill run game, and it's absolutely like hurt him. But it's going to be a high pass volume game, so I am on the kind of pass volume side of things of Chase just getting enough targets that even if you're worried about the matchup, like the opportunity is going to be there.
That's the thing though with Mixon is the opportunity is going to be there, and like he's hitting all the optimals pretty hard, especially on FanDuel.
I'll let him beat me.
7K on FanDuel. He's the 3rd most popular running back right now, and just because the opportunity. And he doesn't. Yeah, a lot of people say he lacks efficiency, but like if you're going to touch the ball 25 times, it's a tough fade. But he's not been good. And does Cincinnati care? Do they realize that? Like, Rich, do they
no, they clearly don't tape? Because no one else is touching the ball. Since week one, he has 81 of 89 backfield touches.
Samaje Perine,
they even brought Chris Evans back this week, and it just didn't matter. They aren't giving the ball to anyone else.
Yeah, it just seems kind of weird, but I guess their options are kind of limited too. And they didn't invest in a backup running back, right? They lost Perine, and now it's Evans and Williams, and I don't think there's much else there. What about the other side, Seattle here, John? How do you feel about Geno, Metcalf, Lockett? I believe they're coming back from a bye. Like, there's one of those thoughts that like maybe the rookie learns a little bit more. They kind of work him in coming back. JSN's been underwhelming so far. The amount of routes, the amount of opportunities has been underwhelming as well. He is super cheap and talented, allegedly. Any interest in there as far as a flyer or just Seattle in general?
And they're coming off of recency bias since Geno only needed to throw the ball 20 times in that Giants game. All they did was keep handing it off to Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet the whole time. It's also interesting because we found out over the bye week, DK Metcalf said that he's been battling a rib injury, playing through it since week 2. And he's been getting the ball where we need him to get him. He's averaging 11.5 yards per target, but everything else, the peripherals just haven't been there so far for him. Even Tyler Lockett has seen 20% of the team's targets compared to Metcalf at 17%. So I do wonder now with him coming back healthy and still having this like salivating 13.5 depth of target, getting targets downfield. I do wonder how he performs now. So that's still my pick at this moment, especially because outside of Metcalf, Lockett, and really Ken Walker, it's still such a condensed target tree. The prince that was promised, Jackson Smith and Jigba, I don't even blame him, given that he's still coming off like the broken wrist he had in the preseason, slow usage as well. The way they used him, basically like Dalton Kincaid, literally just next to the line of scrimmage as well, is not exciting whatsoever. And so the targets still just really go to 3 different players, and that's it. outside of when Drew Lock comes in and gives Noah Fant a 60-yard catch.
What do you have here, Rich, as far as the Seattle offense? Yeah, we're assuming Gino's fine. He said he was fine, so I assume he's going to play this game after leaving the last one early. The Seahawks, what do we is the obvious stuff that's worth talking about, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to see what they calibrate to see if JSN's like role changes. I mean, what's hurt him largely is that Seattle is 28th in the NFL in use of 11 personnel on passing plays. So they're not even running 3 wide receiver stuff, heavy. So we'll see what changes kind of coming out of the bye. There's a couple of guys in that spots like Quentin Johnston, we're going to get some more revealed with him coming out of the bye, see kind of what is on his plate. I do kind of like Lockett a little bit in this matchup just because he plays in the slot a little bit more, and the Bengals have been giving up a lot of touchdowns to opposing slot receivers. They're 21st in catches allowed to opposing slot receivers too, so that gives him a little bit more opportunity. He isn't like exclusively playing the slot. He's not like one of those types of players, but he plays in there a little bit more than DK. Just a couple more opportunities in this matchup maybe that opens up for him. But probably the most intriguing guy is Kenneth Walker, just because of the way the Bengals have been kind of flooded on explosive runs, right? Like the way Kenneth Walker is who he is, right? We saw it last year. He's the same thing this year. He's 9th among all running backs in explosive run rate. He's 20th in negative run rate. He's going to get you a lot, or he's going to get you a little. And that's kind of what the Bengals are doing as a run D. I mean, they're 31st in the league in rate of runs of 10 or more yards. They're allowing 5 yards per carry. Walker also has 13 of the 15 backfield touches in goal to go situations this year. So we know he's got like a monopoly on there, because Charbonnet is starting to play a little bit more, and we'll see it coming out of the bye again if he also plays a little bit more. But we've seen when they're in the green zone, it's been all Kenneth Walker. So he seems to correlate a little bit like where the Bengals are getting beat and the way they're giving up explosives in the run game. So he's pretty intriguing as well. But other than that, yeah, it's just the Seahawks guys as is, because like Daigle said, it's pretty condensed.
John, game number 2, we're sticking with Minnesota, Chicago. We're pivoting to Indianapolis and Jacksonville. What did you want to focus on? I know we talked about a pre-show a little bit, but was not solidified. Do you have stuff on Minnesota, Chicago? Indy, Jax, what's your preference?
I mean, I guess a little bit, just because probably people want to play Jordan Addison, DJ Moore, one of the cheapy running backs, and Roschon Johnson, assuming he's clear from concussion protocol. Khalil Herbert's out, is in that game as well. And then, of course, Justin Fields, like you said, is right now catching the 4th highest ownership, and maybe people will even play him too, given the weather. So that's just an interesting game overall. I guess let's go ahead and start with the Bears side, because I'll start with the cheapy running back, because we are going to have a choice between Roschon, DeMarcado, and Keontae Ingram. We'll get there. And then ideally, we get Chuba Hubbard without Miles Sanders. It's only Wednesday. We'll see if that groin injury is still nagging Sanders by then. But for Roschon, it is interesting because he's the reason Deontay Foreman has been healthy scratch since week 2. Yeah. They basically saw Roschon play in week 1. He had a 19% target share, which is higher than Khalil Herbert has averaged in any game his entire career. And they said, okay, like these are the 2 guys we're going with moving forward. And now all of a sudden, Herbert's probably going to be out and Foreman active. And just given that even on literally twice as few carries as Herbert to this point, Roschon only has 2 fewer 10+ yards run. He is explosive. He's just had limited work so far, because so far he's led the team in targets and carries whenever they're trailing by 8+ points, whenever they're in negative game script. But if Herbert's out of the way, and now we're assuming he's the one getting touches, I think even if both of them are active, Roschon is still such a good play on both DraftKings and FanDuel at his salary. That's one I'm willing to suck up, because I think there are a lot more game script situations to talk about with the Cardinals' cheap backfield.
Yeah, Roschon is 5'8" on FanDuel and 4'6" on DK. He's still in concussion protocol, I believe. Yeah. So obviously you want to make sure he gets out of that, but he does seem to be the more talented of the 2 backs and the one that's preferred by Chicago. And if Roschon doesn't go, like Deontay Foreman, just like he's right there. And if running backs don't matter, he might get 25 touches. I guess you're playing some Deontay Foreman. Kind of stay tuned on that, I suppose, right? That's how that works, Rich?
Yeah, it's interesting because Roschon rendered Foreman inactive, but they never changed his role. He only played when they were getting smoked. Because it's the reason why I was on Khalil Herbert in the Denver game heading into that, when people thought it was like a true backfield split. So I can't keep shaking. It was like if like in neutral game script, do they still use Foreman as like an early down banger, like reluctantly? And then the Vikings have been awesome against the run. Outside of the DeAndre Swift game, like they have absolutely destroyed running backs, like 2.5 yards per carry outside of the DeAndre Swift game, 75% success rate. Obviously, at that price, you just throw the touches at the wall, but there might not be the upside there in there that necessarily is believed. But I'm not going to yuck anyone's yum playing a 4K running back.
Rich, obviously, again, stay tuned as far as this weather pending. 44.5 is the total. It's dropped 5 points since it opened. Not expected to be great weather all week there in Chicago and during this game. But, obviously stay tuned. The Cousins side, Cousins out of the dome in some potential muck without his best receiver in Jefferson. Addison, Osborne, Hawkinson all presumably would step up to some degree. Still kind of a mess there as far as Madison and Akers there in the backfield. Rich, theoretically, there should be some value here if you could throw the ball in whatever weather elements we get. How do we feel about the Minnesota offense?
Yeah, we only have a 31 dropback sample going back to last year of Justin Jefferson being off the field, but Kirk Cousins only completed 58% of his passes in that situation because a lot of these wide receivers outside Justin Jefferson just aren't as talented. Obviously Jordan Addison, we're hoping can be that. But it's just not a spot I love. I can see like the value stance, but like outside of Jordan Addison, you're trying to talk yourself into bad football players. KJ Osborne's a bad football player. Like I understand like you're projecting targets and value here, but like we seen it last week with the Washington side, like, and they have more talented football players, right? Like Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson, and like those guys couldn't get there. So I'm not going to get the KJ Osborne. I can promise you that. He's another guy I'll just let beat me. If KJ Osborne's going to be, it's like when Josh Palmer was chalk, right? Josh Palmer, yeah. by all means, Josh Palmer, stick it to my heart. That's how I feel about KJ Osborne.
And it came down to really one 50-yard catch in the fourth quarter for Palmer.
Addison, at least, we've got first round pedigree. We know that there's talent there. He's already been a better player than KJ Osborne. It's kind of like Daigle's argument for the Roshan versus Foreman stuff, right? Like we already have empirical evidence that exists that this player has outperformed this player. So Addison is like the one guy, if the weather holds, you can talk yourself into bring back. But I have questions about the Vikings just in totality. Like what does this offense actually have without Justin Jefferson?
They're not going to be as good. We know that much, right? Also, the Bears defense is terrible. So like how much does that help them? How much does that push them to get maybe next week it shows or something like that? But
there's just a lot of moving parts. Do they try to run the football more? Do they incorporate the backs in the passing game? Like there's just a lot of variables in play when you lose a guy like Justin Jefferson.
Yeah. Well, your thoughts on that, John, as far as Minnesota, do you feel okay about this offense, assuming weather is decent enough to move the ball?
I wouldn't say okay, but I would still be interested, like Rich said, in Addison. Addison has run 37 fewer routes and earned 2 more targets because that's how bad Osborne's been. He did get Rich to the Best Ball Mania finals last year, but
there you go.
But outside of that, we just haven't even we haven't even seen the ceiling yet for Osborne. Like literally out of 105 receivers with at least 10 targets this year, Osborne is 95th in targets per route run rate. Like he's just not even earning it despite running more routes than Addison and every single game to this point of the year until Jefferson went off the field. So they even started talking up Jefferson a little bit this past week. Addison this past week and the press conferences. So that's kind of why I go to him, knowing he can, or assuming he can earn targets at a much higher rate than Osborne.
Yeah, Brandon Powell came in and earned more targets immediately.
Correct. Yes.
I was just going to ask about Brandon Powell. 3K cheapy on DK. He's got a projection of 6, which is like, okay. I guess he's going to be on the field running some routes. I don't know how desperate we are. Well, we'll see. Come Sunday, it's possible we'll have a lot of value on the slate. And there's also not a lot of guys necessarily pay up for. This isn't like the greatest slate, just as far as studs go. There's several really good ones, obviously, but
because the running backs are all purged this week.
Yeah. Well, we have CMC, but it's not a great matchup, obviously, but it's still CMC. If we have the money, I guess we'll play him. Also, some good teams off the slate as well. But yeah, I'm just curious how much we need salary, and if we're desperate for salary, to save it. Is Powell somebody that's worth looking at? What's his pedigree? You guys know? I don't know much about Brennan Powell.
He was good. Yeah, he was a gadget player with the Rams under Kevin O'Connell, hence why he's on the Vikings. I didn't even realize actually N'Keal Harry was on the Vikings until he was forced to come in late in the game last week. But Powell's not a player we should be trusting. If anything, I think they lean more on 2 wide receiver sets because outside of scoring, I dunk on Alexander Madison every week just because he was a terrible redraft pick, but he's actually been fine relative to other running backs, like over 4 yards per carry, except that now even their entire running game, it's just splitting touches. Like Madison was averaging 81% of the team's running back touches until they acquired Cam Akers last week. And then week 4 down to 72%. Last week, he scores the receiving touchdown again, but he only handled 55% of the team's touches. Like it's become like a backfield timeshare now. So maybe they just throw Josh Oliver out there, who they paid $21 million to get more 2 tight end sets instead of going to Brandon Powell all the time in 3 wide sets, like everyone's assuming.
And Josh Oliver $21 million. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
good for Josh Oliver.
Yeah, he's a good blocker, man. That system always has, but that system always has had kind of like that tight end run blocker. Like it's because they play a lot of 11 personnel and they go 12. They want that guy kind of is good in the run game. But the Bears also have been sneakily kind of good against running backs. Well, they're bad against running backs in the passing game, but they're only allowing 3.68 yards per carry to opposing running backs. Like they're not giving up a lot of explosives either. But they're giving up all their production in the receiving game. So, I mean, maybe that is something like an avenue where like the backs catch more passes post Jefferson and that opens up a lane. But that stuff's all kind of guesswork, like that we're trying to figure out as we remove Jefferson, like a player that just occupied that large of a share of his team's targets and air yards and opportunities. When you remove him from the board, where does it all go?
Sounds like it's more Addison and Roschon game, and only one of us is interested in Roschon. So that's where we're at with this ugly, sloppy weather game.
I'm not interested. It's just I want to see where we get there. This is a game in general. I mean, I would like to play DJ Moore, but like I just want to see where we are later in the week. If this, where the landscape of this game is. I don't want to get super excited about it now and then just be like, well, I have to pull all these guys from my lineups.
Yeah, I try not to freak out too much when it comes to weather and all. Right. And most of the time, we kind of over exaggerate. We get too, swayed, but it's moved a lot. The numbers moved a lot. 5's a big move. And we'll see what we see on Sunday. If it's down to like 42, 43, and But
DJ Moore for his price, like assume like optimal conditions. His price is too cheap.
Oh yeah, I'm playing him. If this was in Minnesota, like I'd love it. I love it. In a dome with no issues, no weather, none of that.
No other Bears wide receiver caught a pass last Thursday.
That is wild. I know that was the showdown slate and the showdown people. Like, yeah, you had to have Moore as your captain.
But it's not even a one game thing. Like, DJ Moore, everyone remembers the season opener. He had the 2 catches for 25, but he has 100 yards or a touchdown in 4 straight games.
Yeah, definitely something worth keeping an eye on as well. In chat, taking a peek at the chat here. Those who listen live to us, I do appreciate it. Kindly hit that like button, do subscribe, turn on those notifications. I also dropped our listener league contest. We'll talk about that in a second and how I goofed last week. Nobody got penalized. We're just going to give out 2 individual free months to RG Premium. In the chat, Richie Smalls is saying Hawk has got to be the play for Minnesota this week. So Hawkinson, if you have the money for tight end, there's no Andrews in the main slate. There's no Kelsey in the main slate. If you have salary, Hawkinson, and theoretically, I guess he's going to get more thrown his way. The absence of Jefferson. How do we feel about Hawkinson? If we have the money, is he somebody we like?
Also, we willed it last week. We were so distraught by what has happened with tight ends this season, and they all bounced back last week. All of the guys that were just in purgatory. George Kittle scores 3 touchdowns. Darren Waller is 8 for 86. That just feels like a bonanza for him. Dallas Goedert had the first 100-yard receiving game for any tight end of the year after he only had 88 yards on the entire season before that.
2 Atlanta tight ends got there. 2.
Yeah, Kyle Pitts. Yeah, Kyle Pitts, another, it was like a big bounce back week for all these guys. All the Jamokes got there.
I don't want to spoil it, but I ran some optimals. You guys are going to enjoy who is the number 1 most popular tight end this week.
It's got to be. I'm not going to say it out loud right now, but it's got to be like the God himself who doesn't go away until he's injured. But we'll talk about it when we get there.
It's a fun name. It's a fun name for sure. Isaiah in the chat, how do I enter the listener league? Okay, here we go. I'll go ahead and drop this link in chat for the people. If you're listening to us on the replay, it'll be a pinned tweet on the YouTube as well. You get yourself 1 month free. 1 month free of RotoGrinders Premium if you happen to finish first. If you take this thing down, take this bad boy down, just $5 to enter a regular contest on DK. And that's not just for NFL. So it's all the sports, any sport you can think of: football, baseball, basketball, NBA, right around the corner, 2 weeks away. PGA, MMA, all the bells, all the whistles. You get the optimizer, you get the projections, you get the ownership stuff, you get the articles, you get everything. And just go ahead and click the link that I'm dropping in chat right now. And last week, we happened to have 2 contests. We have 2 contests going on simultaneously because one is recurring and one I created and I goofed. So I'm going to shout out our winners. Get in contact with me. Let me know at the bottom, in the YouTube comments. Hit me up on Twitter. Slide into my DMs. Shout out to Ralph Steffieri 74. And the contest that I was in, I finished second, actually. And by the way, I don't know why. I got nothing. It was an all or nothing contest. I got 0. I got the home version. Did not win any money.
I mean, you get to pick another movie first watch. Like, act like you got nothing.
That's the point.
That's priceless for sure.
We're giving out gifts, but the entire point was for us to do something besides talk football after an hour and a half of talking football every week.
We want the listeners to win stuff.
Yeah.
We will be talking about Friday the 13th, part 4, the final chapter, and they made another Friday the 13th less than a year later, but I will hold that in for now. Kokesh 67911 took it down at 192.72 points. And you know what? I'm not going to give Kokesh a hard time for playing a 1 o'clock receiver in the flex while also playing Jamar Chase at the wide receiver spot, while also playing Marquise Brown in the wide receiver spot. You won. You can just point to the scoreboard and say, hey, I played a 1 o'clock player in flex. What are you going to do about it? I'm still going to win it. So shout out to Kokesh 67911, as well as Ralph Steffieri 74. I swear I feel like every Millimaker winner has a 1 o'clock player in the flex and a 4 o'clock player in the wide receiver spot. And that's just, congratulations for winning $1 million. But is it really worth it when you get publicly shamed? Yeah, I think it is. It is definitely worth. Yes.
The chat is also saying the link is busted. So producer Steve, if you could test that and work on that, that'd be appreciated.
Dean, Jesus.
All right. Well, if nothing else, it's going to be on the pin tweet on the YouTube, but I thought I sent a good leak.
It'll be on the show. Steve will get it in the chat for everyone, and it'll be on our Twitters throughout the weekend. It will fill this week.
Okay.
Guaranteed.
My bad. My apologies. Game number 3, Arizona at the Rams. The Rams are 7-point favorites. 48.5 is the total. We saw Cooper Kupp come back last week like he did not miss anything. What do you like? 5 catches, maybe 6 targets in the very first series. He was phenomenal. We talked about this last week, how he was underpriced if they actually just let him go. He's a 10K receiver when he's just standard Cooper Kupp. And he's going to be popular this week versus Arizona. Their defense is pretty inept. They're at home. They're in a dome. They're 7-point favorites. I'll throw it to you, Rich. Your thoughts as far as the Rams?
Yeah, I was all excited because, we talked about Stafford last week, and I was all excited to see his price, and both sites jammed him up. They were like, yeah, we're not doing this again. Maybe it was just the Cardinals matchup, but I mean, this Cardinals defense, like I said, they are who we thought they were. This is the most passive defense in the NFL. They're last in the NFL in pressure rate. They're last in blitz rate. They're 25th in rate of man coverage. They just lay back and let you do what you want to them, whatever you want. So, I mean, this is a huge spot for Stafford. When Stafford hasn't been pressured this season, he's averaging 8.2 yards per pass attempt, which is 8th in the NFL. When he has been pressured, he's 25th in the NFL, 4.8 yards per pass attempt. When Arizona is not pressured the opposing quarterback, they are allowing 76.2% completion rate, 8.4 yards per pass attempt, 109 quarterback rating. They have allowed a top 12 scoring quarterback in 4 or 5 games. It includes Sam Howell, Daniel Jones, a dormant Joe Burrow, who finally got there. They're going to get thrown all over here. They could get run all over too, but I mean, Kyron Williams, maybe he'll body bag me again, but he did it again last week. He was last in the NFL in rushing yards below expectations. He now has done that 3 of the 5 weeks this season. He's been the lowest running back. And he's the opposite of Joe Mixon, right? he has the same thing at Joe Mixon. He's just out there getting all the touches. Even last week, 15 to 16 touches. They don't even care that he's bad. But unlike Mixon, he finds the end zone sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got that going for him. He is really expensive though for like the type of player he is. I always have a hard time with like really bad football players that are expensive at DFS. And he might get there, but like this is a guy that's really kind of objectively not that good of a football player, and he's really highly priced. Like I would much rather use that salary and play Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. And Puka Nacua, especially because of the way the Cardinals defend, is a real standout in this game. Everyone was worried about like, well, what is Puka going to look like with Kupp coming back? Is he going to go to the wayside? We kind of talked about it. We have, evidence when Robert Woods was on this team. He had 32% of the team targets last week, had another touchdown. But what we love about him in this matchup is last week, again, targeted on 32% of his routes against zone, 18.8% against man. For the season now, he's been targeted on 34.6% of his routes against zone coverage. Only Tyreek Hill has been targeted at a higher rate against zone coverage than Puka Nacua, as opposed to 18.4% against man coverage. Again, Arizona is 25th in the league in rate of man coverage. So I know a lot of people are going to want to get back to Cooper Kupp. I have no problem playing Cooper Kupp either, but I like Puka Nacua a lot. Hell, you can play both if you can fit the doubles in, because Stafford isn't like so expensive, but I definitely like Puka.
That was my question, because Kupp 9K, Nacua 8K. It's tough to make doubles. Like you said, Stafford's cheap enough where you can kind of make it work. Ertz is there, or Brown is there as far as run backs, kind of cheap run backs on the Arizona side. The running back.
This game. You play all the onslaught this game. You could fit it.
Yeah. So it's something you can make work if you want to make work. And I'm just trying to think how that looks, right? I suppose both get in the box, right? Receiving what you get, Kupp 8 for 110 and a touchdown. Nacua something similar as well. I guess they both can do that. They got rid of who they trade. What's the guy's name that just moved off their team?
Jefferson.
Yeah, he wasn't doing anything anyway. But
he was exercising. Very good cardio guy.
There you go. So I suppose
he ain't gonna be doing no cardio in Atlanta. He's doing a lot of watching.
No, he's hanging out with Chase Claypool with Miami or something like that. I don't know. But what do you have here, John, as far as the Rams, the receivers? Do you have a preference? Do you have a lean as far as Kupp versus Nacua? Projections are certainly going to take the Kupp to spend the extra 1K. Nacua will be less owned. Do you think it's feasible to run them both out together, pairing with Stafford? Is that something you're looking to do?
On a Wednesday, I'm not sure. I want to. This is the game I got most excited about. Whenever I started looking at the slate and breaking everything down, I'm like, oh yeah, this is the game right here. Especially as we have questionable game scripts, questionable defenses against questionable quarterbacks, and weather everywhere else. Like here's the one where defenses and offenses just break it all down. Not to mention that at least the target tree for the Rams, whenever Kupp came back, was condensed. Like Rich said, 32% of the team's targets for Puka. Kupp was at full speed, 35% of the team's targets, ran just one route less than Stafford's drop back, because it was out there as a full-time player. The Cardinals, despite allowing production everywhere, are also one of only 4 defenses allowing 10 yards per catch to opposing slot receivers. So the matchup also works out in Puka's favor, or in Cooper Kupp's favor. It just all fits, honestly. Like Rich said, even Kyren Williams, like maybe you don't want to play him, but maybe he comes in at low ownership. So we just take those touches and hope for the best, since he is still leading all running backs in route participation. He's not getting targets on those routes now. He has 5 targets his last 2 games, and his target share the last 2 weeks has been 7.5% and 5.2%. So it's really become Kupp and Puka taking everything, a la Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers. But in this game script, I think I'm still willing to chance it all, honestly.
So, John, what about the Arizona side? We kind of teased the running backs there, pretty cheap. We'll see how that is. Ingram, we're not sure if Ingram's going to be back this week or not. I think he's still officially questionable. If he is back, would he all of a sudden jump back to the 1? I thought he was the 2 running behind Connor. Did he lose his spot to DeMercado? Or do we not know? Is it kind of some guesswork there? Do we like Zach Ertz, who got in the box last week, but I don't think he did anything else, if I'm not mistaken, right? Just kind of like basically, 2 catches for 10 yards and a touchdown. So he didn't get a pile of targets, but he did fall in the end zone. So that's something. He is not the guy, by the way. It was number 1 as far as the optimals. Number 2, 24% of optimals right now on a Wednesday night. for tight end on DK. Laporta, by the way, Laporta number 1 on FanDuel for what it's worth. Early optimals. Love Sam Laporta. Yeah. So what do we have here, John, as far as this backfield? Is there any clarity or is there some guesswork right now?
I think DeMercado fits the game script of a Rams onslaught because in weeks 1 through 3, when DeMercado and Ingram played together, Ingram did outtouch Amari 11-5. But we've seen now in those first 3 games that DeMercado ran 14 routes to Ingram 7, and more importantly, on third down, outsnapped Ingram 17-0. So in a negative game script, it would be DeMercado who'd be out there as the team's pass catching back. And that's what we're looking at here. We're assuming negative game script with the Cardinals being touchdown road dogs and having a sieve of a defense against the offense that is coming into full speed. And for the first time all year, this is back-to-back home games for the Rams. They started the season with 3 of their first 4 games on the road. So like you would have to think they're finally a little more relaxed for the first time all season too. So yeah, I just think it works out well for like a similar to a Dolphins onslaught with the Rams. And then you just run it back for cheap with DeMercado, assuming negative game script for the Cardinals.
Rich, you have a lean as far as an Arizona backfield. Maybe bring in Marquise Brown. He seems too cheap. He's probably going to be pretty popular too. At least that's where he's looking right now.
They refuse to budge him, man. DraftKings just won't go up on him.
I don't really get that. He does seem too cheap there. Wilson's also another cheap route more if you can buy that. Obviously, the floor is low on both of those guys. But yeah, John, your favorite run back in Arizona, what route is it? Is it through one of the running backs or is it through a receiver or tight end?
You were going to Rich, and then you came back to me.
I apologize.
I mean, just making it fit. Zach Ertz makes sense, but again, Marquise Brown is too cheap, and it's not like he's failing. He still gets there every single week. Since week 2, he's seen 31% of the team's targets. He's earning everything. He has 10 targets in 3 of his last 4 games. I don't know what more he could do. He's being treated like DJ Moore last year on FanDuel, where they just refused to budge him no matter what he did. Like that's kind of the Marquise Brown zone now on DraftKings.
Go ahead, Rich.
I like DeMercado. I mean, he's shown more in a short term than Keontae Ingram showed in 2 years. I mean, as a rookie, Keontae Ingram rushed 27 times for 60 yards. In a short sample this year, he rushed 12 times for 15 yards. I have a hard time believing that this coaching staff could watch what DeMercado has done and the small opportunities had and like want to just willingly go back to Keontae Ingram. I mean, it could happen. And like this run game, Drew Petzing's done a really nice job in creating explosives in the run game. We saw DeMercado have the 18-yard touchdown run last week. So, I mean, there is some opportunity here, I think, for him, and he can catch a few passes. But so I do kind of prefer him of the two. We'll have to wait and see. Like I said, if it's going to come down to him and Roshan, we're going to want to look at weather stuff, right? Like, and see if Roshan gets cleared, which he probably will be because they played on Thursday last week. But that's kind of where we are right now earlier in the week is that we've got this game that could be fun indoors and could go back and forth a little bit versus like this game that could be sloppy outside. And do they play Deontay Foreman at all, right? Like those, like, so for me, like right now, my initial thing is to go to this Arizona LA side of it, but we'll see what happens later in the week.
I'm not saying I'm going to squeeze him in either, but Tutu came like an inch away from a second touchdown as well. They're still using him in the same way. I think they're calling him ghost routes where they just pretty much put him in motion every single play because like he's so small, he hides behind Cooper Kupp and Puka whenever he runs across the line of scrimmage, and then he can gain speed that way, trajectorying. That's not a word. Firing out of the backfield. But I'm not saying I'm playing him, but yeah, Tutu's still being used somewhat too.
Are you guys like me where you look at this slate, the 11-game slate, and you don't really love anything? Like you got to play something. We're still going to play. We're going to do the research and all that. But I look at the board and like, there's nothing like, man, I can't imagine not having a piece of this or that or this. Like, nothing looks spectacular.
I mean, it's funny because like I set an initial, like I usually set a placeholder lineup. And like, I was like, and I felt so good about the placeholder that I was like, like you feel so good about your Wednesday lineup. I was like, like,
see, you like it. Okay.
But
as a whole though, there's not a lot of amazing.
Oh no.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there are spots that I think are really, exploitable. And there's a couple weather spots that I just want to see cleared out as well. But there are like pieces that I really like here.
Yeah.
But as far as like the
options.
game onslaught, though, like there's not a lot of like games where you think are going to be great, right?
No, it doesn't look great as far.
Especially now that we're getting Minshew instead of Anthony Richardson. Like, does that game get scaled back a little bit?
Yeah,
it is a Minshew revenge game, though.
Yeah, is he a vengeful guy? I think they gave him his opportunity.
Probably not.
Yeah, who knows?
He seems like a pretty chill dude.
I think what we'll talk about it as far as the running back situation there for Indianapolis, because it's just weird that how much Moss played over Taylor, but he was playing well and you couldn't really bench him, but Taylor got paid. And
dude, I played so much Zach Moss the week before.
Everybody did, right? Like you can't play running backs against Tennessee, I was told, and you certainly can't play the running back too.
Well, I mean, watch Tennessee. We're gonna, if you get up for that London game, if you guys are all, because Tier Tart got hurt at the end of week 3 or week 4, and he missed last week, and they got run all over with him out of the middle. So
okay,
it's something to watch to see if Baltimore exploits it too, because I don't think he's going to play in London. But it could be something to watch going forward, though, with Tier Tart being injured.
Maybe bet over on Lamar rushing yards. I don't know how else to take advantage of that, but I guess the Baltimore running game besides Lamar is not.
It hasn't been on fire. That's why I want to see if it is just like a one-off. But you obviously lost, one of the key ingredients of stopping the run.
Interesting. All right, we're gonna give our favorite plays position by position. Before we do that, do you want to mention friends at Ticketmaster? More memories are made when you're there for live NFL action, and when you need tickets, Ticketmaster, they got you covered. The official marketplace of the NFL, Ticketmaster gives you more ways to find your perfect seats. Their interactive seat map gives you a 360-degree preview of your section to make sure you have the best view of these pivotal plays. And if your plans happen to change, Ticketmaster, they give you more flexibility to sell or transfer your tickets. Plus, mobile tickets, they make getting in on game day a breeze. You can also customize your Ticketmaster app to rep your team's colors. Find tickets today, Ticketmaster.com/NFL. All right, let's run it back, talk about our favorite quarterbacks we've not yet talked about in games we've not yet talked about. And so, Rich, you kind of hinted at it as far as some of the games, and some don't look spectacular. I'm looking at the quarterbacks that are left, like Jalen Hurts against the Jets. Pretty heavy favorite, not a great matchup. Tua at home versus Carolina. Theoretically, they should rip. Does Carolina keep up? I don't know. We'll see. Stay tuned. What quarterbacks do we like that we've not yet talked about?
Yeah, I mean, you can always, I think, attack Tua if you want, because Carolina is another one of these defenses that just are letting you do whatever you want. Anything, running the ball, passing the ball, whatever you want to do. But I think, obviously, like Daigle hinted, it's probably going to be chalky, but Trevor Lawrence just really stands out. He's got one QB1 scoring week this season. It is against this Colts defense. And the Colts are just a team we're going to keep attacking. I mean, they got these young defensive backs. They're pretty solid against the run. They force teams to have to throw. Gus Bradley's doing his, we're just going to sit back and cover 3 with all these young defensive backs. Gus Bradley against Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence has completed 82% of his passes against the Colts his past 3 games. 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. He's giving you a little bit of rushing every week. I mean, he just really, really stands out. It's a game where we probably don't have to deal with weather stuff. Yeah. So, I mean, him and Tua stand out. We talked about Stafford earlier. So, like, those are all the guys that kind of stand out to me.
John?
We talked about most of them. I'm going to see where ownership goes. And it's ugly, but, and I'm not saying I'll play it. That's 4 setup sentences just to say maybe Desmond Ridder. Given how game script goes. Commanders games are inducive to overs. Like they're combining for 54 points right now because of the way Sam Howell plays football, where basically the Commanders have to keep their foot on the gas. That's why they're averaging the 5th most pass attempts per game, because all he does is take sacks and then we're getting points on the board. But in terms of Ridder, and it may be recency bias too, given that he's coming off literally the best game of his career, but we're also quietly getting a little bit of volume. He's over 30 pass attempts in his last 4 games. He's at least 37 pass attempts in 2 of his last 3. And the Commanders are allowing the most scrambles to quarterbacks through 5 games as well. And so, like, maybe we have a little bit of a higher floor here if we want to spend up on other players and taking old 5K Desmond Ridder with us instead.
I tried to get there on Ridder, but then I looked at some of the Washington stuff, and like Washington's faced like a really great slate of quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like, man, is Ritter in that caliber? Because like, you look at like the matchup and you say like, all right, well, Washington's a team we want to target. And then I was like, man, Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, Josh Allen, Russell Wilson's been playing good football. Like, do I cold Ritter like in that category? I think the way to go about that is to probably just play Drake London. And then
he's on my pool. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's a fun stat though to see what holds true. Washington, obviously, they've allowed 20% of their completed passes to go for 20 or more yards. They've allowed 6 passing touchdowns on throws 20 or more yards downfield, the most in the NFL. Desmond Ritter's never thrown a touchdown pass 20 yards or further in the air. What will break first? Also, another fun streak this week. We won't talk about CMC. I don't think so, but like the Browns have not allowed a running back to score yet this week, and CMC's bringing in his 14-game touchdown streak. So we're going to see some things break this week in terms of streaks.
Did you have something else in that game? I know you kind of like we were talking about possibly featuring it. It would have been the lowest total ever we featured at 37.5. San Fran at Cleveland. That's a good stat though. What gives? You think?
I think he was just joking, right?
Was that a joke?
I mean, there is a player I like in that game if the weather is fine.
Okay. Do you want to just let it sit there, or should there be a
it's Brandon Ayuk.
I'd say probably have to wait for wide receiver. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the Browns are playing the most man coverage in the NFL. First of all, Brandon Ayuk's been awesome. Like he's third in yards per route run behind Tyreek Hill and Marvin Mims. God damn it, Broncos. Of all players to run 50 or more pass routes this season. Like I said, he's just destroying man coverage. He's been consistently the man coverage beater for the 49ers. He's been targeted on a team high 30.4% of his routes versus man coverage. Obviously the Browns are going to catch some stigma, but we don't really know we know the Browns are probably a good defense, but we don't know where they actually lie because they faced one good quarterback and that quarterback completed 80% of his passes and threw for 9 yards per pass attempt against them. So like, where's the truth? But that's a game that we have to wait and see like where the weather and stuff's going to lie. It's a low game total, but I think if all things are fine, Brandon Ayuk is still a guy I'm going to work into tournaments if everything checks out.
By the way, since we're here, I know we're talking running backs in a second, but what in the world do you do with Kittle, Rich? Like, how do you like?
You just got to keep playing them. It's the same thing we talk about the tight ends like Goddard and Kyle, but like you just got to play these dudes. It is what it is. Especially the 49ers in general, because take all 3 of their guys. Because Debo is a little bit of frustrating. Hell, Ayuk has 2 games where he's been outside of the wide receiver 36 or lower. But like, you just have to take the bitter with the sweet. Devontae Smith, I think, is in that same bucket. Jalen Waddle, like these teams, these guys that play on these offenses that are scoring 30 points a week. Like, yeah, you live through some lulls, but like when the spike weeks come, like they're big spike weeks.
Was that a Vanilla Sky reference? The bitter and the sweet? I hope it was.
I mean, not intentionally, but it's the same corollary. Like,
I'm a stand for Vanilla Sky. It's kind of a divisive movie, but I feel like people, I think they should like you. like the Vanilla Sky or no? We'll talk movies in a second.
No, that seems like a very Dean movie, though.
Oh, it's good, man.
Sounds like we're watching it ahead of week 7.
I'm not going to assign it. No, I actually I had a couple in mind. I haven't officially settled, but no, I will not assign Vanilla Sky, and you've already seen it before. Hey, running backs. Let's talk some running backs, John. Jump in here. Who are your favorite running backs this week? CMC is pricey, but like projection-wise, he looks really good, but we do live in the world of the salary cap, and the matchup probably not spectacular, but certainly he can overcome it because he's like probably the best running back in the league, or certainly in the Family Feud board. Who are your favorite running backs for week number 6?
I think some people may get there, maybe most of the field to spend up just for game script reasons because he hasn't been good. But when we talk about playing running backs just because they're touches, I mean, dude, Josh Jacobs against the Patriots, this Patriots offense, game script just sets up so well. They've been in the red zone 1 time in their last 3 games. They haven't scored more. They haven't scored more than 20 points at any time this year. And then Belichick, who's just done, came out and said, we're not changing anything. Matt Jones goes back under center this week, despite being benched for 2 consecutive games, but not until the other team posted 30 plus on them. That way, like Belichick has his out and says, just for game script reasons, there was no reason to keep Matt Jones out there. So even the Raiders, for as bad as they are, although Max Crosby's playing amazing, we can at least say, well, Josh Jacobs is getting 86% of the team's backfield touches. It's going to be a favorable game script. So even if it's bad weather, like we know where the ball's going. So he's on the list. And then, I mean, Mostert's going to be one of the most popular running backs of the entire slate, right?
FanDuel at least priced them up. We've said, I mean, give FanDuel some credit this year. They've been way more aggressive.
They're very proactive to what's happening on the field and what sort of fantasy points are being scored. And that's one of the reasons why Mixon's pretty cheap over there, because keeps failing.
But they made Mostert the second highest running back on the slate.
Yeah, they're not messing around over there pricing wise. By the way, Jacob's the most popular running back on my Wednesday nights optimals for DK, hitting 37% of them. Are the Raiders just like 3-point favorites this week? Am I wrong in saying that? I feel like that's what it is, right?
There's only 2 teams that have finished below their implied team total every game of the season, and it's the Patriots and Raiders.
I love it. That's a great stat. Do we like the under here? 41.5?
You can't even watch the Patriots. Like, it's unbearable.
What's going to happen when the Patriots, the slowest team in the league, faces the Dolphins? Like, what's
they already played.
Wait, what did happen? Oh, they got walloped, right? Yeah.
No, I mean, they kept
they stay close?
Yeah, no, Belichick played an amazing scheme against them, actually. It's probably one of the most impressive performances of the entire year.
How did I forget that happened? Yeah.
The
Sunday night. Black minor race.
He basically, his plan was to let the Dolphins run in that game.
Yeah. We should mention that, Achane obviously out for
the next. Dude, we can never, like, losing Achane and Justin Jefferson the same week. Like, come on.
This is why season long is so cruel. And like,
dude, that touchdown run he had, there was 2 Giants defensive backs 15 yards away from him, and neither guy got an angle on him. Like, he just absolutely destroyed them.
We're expecting Wilson possibly back this week, right?
Maybe he hasn't practiced.
Yeah, like maybe. Yeah, Ahmed will get some run, and Mostert at 6.4K, probably the lead back.
And the Panthers, dude, like the Panthers are just getting smoked in the run game.
How much do we like Mostert? I guess we like him a fair bit.
We like him a lot on DraftKings.
Even if they dominate, it goes back to what we said last week in playing Tyreek Hill, Mostert, or Mostert Achane, and that they still have to get there, right? They still have to put up 40 and then scale everyone back. So, like, guess who's putting up 40? Most likely Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, some combination of Raheem Mostert.
I didn't watch the game over there in London. I don't know if you guys watched the all 22 or the condensed version, but Etienne looked really good, at least in the box score against this week. He's in the Dome versus Indianapolis. Looks like he's clearly the guy for Jacksonville. Where is he for you, Rich, as far as Etienne when it comes to running backs? Is he somewhere on the board for you?
Yeah, what we liked last week was the missing ingredient for Etienne kind of this entire season, because he's catching more passes and he's been dominating the touches for weeks, was that they finally used him in goal-to-goal situations. Like, he had been pulled for Tank Bigsby in goal-to-goal situations up until last week, and he even converted a 2-point conversion that, doesn't show up necessarily in the box score as a goal-to-go carry, but they used him in that capacity. That's literally the only thing he's been missing. So he's going to start getting those touches, then he basically is like up there with like right behind CMC, like in terms of opportunity, like that he's getting, because he is catching the passes now this year. He's dominating the backfield touches on a team that can score points. We just need to see some consistency in him getting those money touches. But if he's going to get those, then like he's going to run to some real big games like he did last week.
And those were these last 2 games where he's handled every single touch inside the 10-yard line. They had 4 running backs active. They also reactivated Jermichael Hasty for those games, and it doesn't matter. Like, no one else is doing anything else. They're not playing any other guy. It's incredible.
Notam in chat says, take Achane's long runs away, and he only has 20 yards in his last 3 games. I mean, you can do that.
Well, what if you take away his short runs? Then what is he averaging? 30 yards a carry. Yeah,
it's a weird thing.
Yeah, that's always a thing in fantasy, like football. Like, do you not want the guy that can do things that other running backs can't? It's the same thing we talk about Kenneth Walker, right? Like, we talk about the boomer bust stuff. But what makes Kenneth Walker worthwhile is he does things that regular running backs can't do. And that's what makes it okay to take, the bitter with the sweet, because the sweet is something that other guys, it's a Josh Allen factor too. Josh Allen still does a bunch of dumb things, right? But what Josh Allen does great, not many quarterbacks can do.
It goes back to Breece Hall last week too, where we said, I think the exact sentence you used, Rich, was like, Breece Hall at 5,400, still scary because he kills you. On like 12 touches against the Broncos, he got 25 now, but on 12 touches, even like he kills you at that price. Achane still priced less than Mostert, like obviously killed us.
Hall is fully unleashed now, right? There's no turning back in this. Hall's the clear guy. Cook is dust, and that's that. right?
Yeah,
Like
I mean, they're
Hall's-
still playing Michael Carter more than I want him to play,
Yeah.
but it's fine. Listen, what we got in terms of usage, it was a great step.
Yes.
I
not
mentioned
gonna push back
before
on it.
with Moss and Taylor, both in the 6Ks, like neither seem especially playable, but like I guess you can tell yourself a story. At some point, Taylor has to unseat Moss, right? He kind of sort of has to, I think.
I mean, why
yeah.
would they take Moss off the field right now? Like, he's been awesome. Only Bijan Robinson has more 10-yard runs than Moss this year. The Titans hadn't allowed over 67 yards to any running back through week 4, and Moss put up 165 and 7 yards per carry against them. Like, he looked slippery out there. I don't know where it came from. He's never looked like this ever in his career, but this year, man, he's been awesome. Like, you can't take him off the field.
Well, they have 42 million reasons, right, to put Taylor on the field. I always love that, because how is a reason worth $1? How a dollar is all it costs for a reason? Who does that math? Never really understood that. But yeah, that's how much Taylor got paid.
I am though, like, I'm happy for both. I'm happy Jonathan Taylor got paid. Nowadays, like, we've been doing this for so long, I don't even care about organizational arguments. It's like, just I'm happy to see the players get paid. But then also for Zach Moss to stick it to Irsay, who didn't want to pay Taylor with that performance, it was like so sweet on every single angle.
Yeah, because then the wraparound here is that if Moss is this good, he's a free agent. Hopefully he gets paid too.
Yep.
Obviously, he's not going to get like a $10 million contract like some of these other guys that were getting franchise tag and trying to fight back the system. But like, hopefully this is like a resurgence for Zach Moss. Hopefully he hangs around, because I just want more good players, right? Like, we keep getting good players taken away from us.
Yes.
I need something to happen. Like, right. Like, this is the problem with the Ramondre Stevenson stuff, right? It's like, I would be totally fine with Ramondre Stevenson failing if it meant another player was getting elevated, but like, it's just like Ezekiel Elliott's not doing anything either. So like, it's just more bad. Like, it's just more bad players. I want more good players in fantasy football to play. So I have no problem with that happening.
And I like anybody dunking on Jim Irsay. I'm good with that. Username I love weed, consider the source in chat, is saying a chain, proper way to say it. I thought there was a tweet that said it's a chan. Is it not a chan? Now again, consider the choice.
He changed it.
He's the one
to a chan.
He's the one who said it's a chan. Like, quote, Devon Achan said his name is Devon Achan. And apparently what happened was the logs, like every game book throughout his career at Texas A&M, like, just didn't have his name correct. And I guess no one asked him, even though he was a 3-down back at Texas A&M. I don't know why, but apparently everyone just pronounced his name incorrectly for his entire career.
I mean, it's the Arthur Juan thing, right? Like, AJ Brown came out and said it's actually Arthur Juwan after, I want to take some credit for bringing that to light, but
what we're saying is that I love weed is wrong. Is that what we're saying here?
No, I mean, listen, who knows? Whatever. I mean,
all right. Any other
when you average 12 yards a carry, you can be called whatever you want, basically. That's all.
Yeah, I'll call you whatever you want. You score 4 touchdowns, that's the rules. Yeah, for sure. If you're the NFL, I'll call whatever you want to be called. You've earned the right.
Our sweet prince was robbed, though. I wish he was still playing.
Do we have anybody else as far as running backs, or shall we pivot to receivers? I think
Alvin Kamara is the only other guy that kind of stands out a little bit. Like, he's got 24 and 25 touches since he's come back, 2 top 10 scoring weeks. He obviously can catch the ball a little bit. So like, he's kind of the other guy. I'll at least swallow Alvin. Like, you were talking about Kamara versus Mixon at the same price. I'm just going to play Kamara.
He looks fresh and he's getting a ton of touches. What happened to Ramondre Stevenson, by the way? He's going the wrong way, and I guess the Patriots has got to see what they have in Zeke Elliott. I know he's been bad, and like the team's been bad overall, but the Stevenson stuff, is it just over for him, or has just been some bad run? Is he on the wrong team? He's really cheap, but nobody wants to play him. That's it. I hear silence. That nobody wants to chime in.
I mean, you heard me say all the Patriots offense stats. They're like, Demario Douglas was their most important receiver. Like, when he got injured, if you watch that fourth quarter and don't go back and watch it, like, every time you look up, Ty Montgomery's on the screen and you're just yelling, like, why? What happened to this game where Ty Montgomery had to come in every single snap? It's because Juju and Demario Douglas got injured. Like, they just have nothing. They have no juice at all. Ramondre Stevenson's running routes on barely over 50% of dropbacks. Like, they're not even using him properly because they're still getting Zeke too involved. Like Rich said, no one is elevated. based on these guys, the talented players getting scaled back at all. It's crazy.
And I went and looked when I was writing this game up, because this was the first time. It took this 6 weeks, and I actually had a game. Like, I had to stop writing up games when I got to this game, because like I said, when I got to that stat where it's like the only two teams that have not hit their implied total every week, they're playing each other. And I'm just like, because everything is so gross. And I was like, well, the Raiders, like, they've been a team like we kind of targeted. And I was like, man, like, they've been kind of good against the pass the last 3 weeks. And then I was like, well, what did Mac Jones do against them last year? Mac Jones was 13 of 31 passing against the Raiders last year in this matchup. And I'm just like, oh God, like this, I was just so disheartened. Right. I was like, I told Ray, I sent him the game. I got done with it. I was like, dude, I'm stopping tonight. I can't go on. I'll write up more games tomorrow. Like, the game actually broke my will to like do football.
I hope he understood. I imagine he's like, yeah, I get it. Patriots, Raiders. Yeah, I just enjoy the rest of your night. Give it a shot tomorrow. Receivers. What do you got for me, Rich? So far, some receivers we've not yet talked about.
I mean, listen, man, Daigle brought up Calvin Ridley. Everyone's gonna play Calvin Ridley. Not even just because the Colts stuff too. Like, we talked about DeAndre Hopkins last week, right? And DeAndre Hopkins, I couldn't believe what his ownership came in at last week. This was a guy that hadn't been played for 3 weeks. Like, everyone was like, this dude is dust. And it was literally like one of the most popular plays on the slate, whether everyone got there. What's that?
And the double spy, he was 18%. And like, I was seeing him in early projections at 6 to 7%. That's why I played him. And then I pulled it up. It's like, where the hell did this come from?
He was literally in everyone's lineup. He was in like in all the cash game stuff, everything. Like, so, I mean, it's not just the Colt stuff, and not just what Ridley did versus this team in week 1 where he had 8 for 101. Fantasy gamers are so fickle. Like, people have been complaining about Ridley in fantasy football. Like, the dude's had like 2 bad games, like an out of 5. They're so impatient, man. We're just like, but the Colts play cover 3 more than any team in the NFL, 61% of their snaps. Ridley leads the team in targets per route run against cover 3. He's averaging 2.7 yards per route run when teams go to cover 3. So like, it just lines up for him to be kind of a guy that's going to be popular. It's but no weather stuff. You get kind of the inherent run back too in that game if you want all the guys we talked about because of the Josh Downs. Now that Minshew is back in under center, Minshew has been targeted Minshew has targeted downs on 26.7% of his routes. He has 25% of the team targets with Minshew under center. With Anthony Richardson under center, he was targeted on just 16.7% of his routes, 16% of the team targets. So we do get some elevation for like a cheapie there too. You could definitely get the Pittman too. But yeah, you get kind of that inherent run back.
John, who do you like as far as receiver?
We touched on Desmond Ridder stacking partner with Drake London, so I'll go there. The third highest rate of passing touchdowns so far the Commanders have allowed, but wide receiver ones in particular, in the past couple of weeks is because they put their first round cornerback, Emmanuel Forbes, 166 pounds of him in shadow coverage against AJ Brown and DJ Moore. And we've all saw what happened. They had to bench Forbes in that first half even because Moore had already smoked him for 2 of his 3 touchdowns in that game. But wide receiver ones against the Commanders this year. Marvin Mims, 113 yards and a touchdown. Stephon Diggs, 8 for 11. AJB, 175 and 2. And then, of course, Moore Thursday night, 230 and 3. So this is Drake London's opportunity, you would think. So whether you play Ridder or not, you're probably not going to. I think Drake London's a good option. Jalen Waddle is interesting. Just given the theory of what happens if we're taking Achane off the field. And I understand that Waddle's target share in the first couple games, he was injured in week 2, but in week 1, he only had an 11.3% target share. But last year, remember, when they weren't targeting their running backs heavily, this year they're 7th in running back target rate because of Achane. But when they weren't targeting their running backs, it was so condensed. It was Tyreek 32%, Jalen Waddle 22% with 2 on the field. And so I do wonder if there's a little bit of a spring back. We may even saw a little bit of that beginning last week since Waddle did have 35.7% of the team's targets, 4 end zone targets as well. Nearly had 2 touchdowns in that game. So I think paying down for Waddle, if you need the salary over Tyreek Hill, is an interesting pivot. And then I've already given one dumb cheap option. So at wide receiver, if Mike Evans is out, I think the pivot's Trey Palmer. If you're trying to get all the way down to 3K, we saw when Mike Evans was injured in week 4, Devin Tompkins recorded 445 and a touchdown, but Trey Palmer was the one who matched Chris Godwin in routes run in the second half of the game. Palmer already has a touchdown earlier this year in 3 wide sets whenever both Evans and Godwin were healthy. And he is kind of the profile we like a above average athlete, 98th percentile 40 speed at his size, 4.33 40 time, had a 32.5% target share at Nebraska in his final season in college. So yeah, if you just need the salary for like a little cheapy wide receiver, I think that's my favorite if Evans is out.
Yeah, I was going to bring up Godwin just because Evans didn't practice, and he's had a history of hamstring. When Mike Evans left the game, Godwin got 7 targets on 18 pass routes.
That's good too.
That's a good note. I wish that game it'd be a lot more fun if that was in the Dome in Detroit. 43.5 is kind of low for a Detroit game, but I guess the offense takes a pretty big hit for Detroit's overall.
DraftKings hasn't really moved. Like Godwin's been kind of like relatively like higher priced all year.
Yeah,
he's a lot cheaper on FanDuel because again he hasn't really done a lot. But yeah, when I pulled that up, I mean, when you get targeted 7 times in 18 routes, and like because like Baker, you got Palmer and you've got Tompkins, but it's like who am I going to throw the ball to? Am I throw it to those guys, or am I going to throw it to Chris Godwin?
It's an interesting spot too, since we think Tampa Bay's defense is good. Baker's been so good though under pressure. He's literally leading the league in completion rate under pressure. I still think one of them can get there against this Lions defense. So yeah, Godwin, Palmer if you need cheap. It's an interesting game.
If Evans plays, like none of it's spectacular, it's also sort of fine.
Yeah. I mean, it's
because even
just to keep an eye on, but he didn't practice. Like, and it was like a full DNP. Like, it wasn't even like a Wednesday thing coming out of a bye. And obviously, Mike Evans has like a long history with hamstrings, and he's over 30. So maybe they just have to hold him out until he's good.
John, you mentioned Waddle, and speaking of receivers over 30, the Adam Thielen thing I kind of mentioned earlier, but like, after week 1, 9 targets, 14 targets, 13 targets. He's been smashing. DK has elevated his price, but not enough. 4K, 3.9, 4.5, 5.1. Now he's all the way up to 5.9. Is he like, if you're playing Dolphins, you're probably like Dolphins, their team total is like 28 or something like that. Is Thielen a worthwhile run back? Is he the run back for Carolina? You don't have
30. I mean, they have the highest team total.
Oh, it's a 30? Okay. Yeah. Is Thielen the clear and obvious run back for Carolina if you want to do such a thing?
Yeah, because no one else matters in that offense. Again, maybe we get Miles Sanders out, so you have Chuba Hubbard, who's been really good actually this year. But given the game script, I mean, we've seen DJ Shark. We tried the Hayden Hurst experiment in week 2 after he had a good week 1. Adam Thielen's still the one who's wide receiver 10 in PPR points per game, and that's around this miserable Bryce Young offense. He's the only one who consistently gets there, whether they're down by 10 or 40. So yeah, he's literally the only guy you can play.
All right, let's knock out some tight ends. We'll talk about a movie in a second. I saw producer Rob hanging out in chat. I think he's going to join us during our little movie session, so he'll probably jump in here, as well as producer Steve. I assume producer Steve will jump in, although I do not believe he watched Friday the 13th, part 4, the final chapter. Tight end, John, you're going to lead us off. Some of your favorites. I know there's a lot to choose from, but if you can kind of narrow it down, who are your favorites this week?
I only have one favorite, and that's the God himself, Logan Thomas, because when he burns, he burns bright. He's not in your life forever, but when he's there for a good time. Because he's only played really 2 games at full strength now. And in those 2 games that he wasn't injured in or returning from injury for, he led the team in targets in both weeks. 27.5% target share in week 1, 22.9% last week against the Bears with 11 targets. And you could say, well, that was the Bears. Okay, this is the Falcons. And the Falcons are allowing the 3rd most fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. Like, he's the guy, although their target tree is flattened overall. Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, like no one's seeing 18% of the team's targets. Logan Thomas is out there being schemed like Travis Kelce. I don't know why, but he's also running a route on 78% of drop back. So he's literally an every down player seeing every target.
I was going to ask the hand in the dirt question, so I'm glad you kind of answered it, because Washington, I believe, Howell's being sacked at like a record pace, and
Correct.
They probably could use an extra blocker, but I guess that's just on John Bates and Cole Turner and not so much on Logan Thomas. He's going to keep running routes, you're assuming, going forward?
No, it's on Sam Howell.
Oh, well, he holds the ball probably too long. Yeah, that's kind of an issue. But
listen, pressures are an offensive line stat. Sacks are a quarterback stat.
All right, fair enough. Well, he's going to keep taking sacks, though, right? I guess.
Yes, that's who he is. That's who he is.
Yeah. We'll take some Atlanta defense this week,
Dude, you can put 10 linemen, I guess, because you have to have a guy run around, so you wouldn't have anything to throw to. But he's still going to take sacks because that's who he is.
Rich, tight. Oh, I didn't say. You guys want to know who are currently? I ran. Let's see, 125.
Oh, the optimal guy. Yeah.
Not Logan Thomas.
Logan Thomas is 5th. It's really congested.
It's got to be Ertz, right?
Ertz is 2nd. Number 1 is somebody.
Is it Pitts then?
It is Kyle Pitts.
All right.
Of course, it's Kyle Pitts. But it's congested. Kyle Pitts 27%, Ertz 24%, Dallas Goedert 22%, Cole Kmet 14%, Laporta 14%, and Thomas 14%. All those guys have 14%. So I guess Thomas is tied at 14%. And then there's a big drop off after those 6. Rich, do you have anybody that stands out amongst that group? You want to go off the board?
No, I had Logan Thomas. Dean, I just play whatever you tell me to play, man.
You're going to play Kyle Pitts?
Jesus, take the wheel, man. You just tell me the tight end optimal, and I'm going to play him.
How many points was Atlanta down by last game where they were forced to throw so much? I'm trying to remember. Do you remember?
So Atlanta's only led for 14% of their snaps all year. It's the lowest rate of any team with a winning record.
Yet they still run the ball an incredible amount. But I guess they've never been typically they're not down by 3 touchdowns where Ritter's just dropping back and chucking.
Right? I mean, the dropbacks have been there. That's not a thing for Pitts this year. I think Pitts just isn't fully healthy. He doesn't look fast. Everything feels like a contested catch with Pitts right now, where before it was just look at how open he is, and look at this terrible inaccurate target. But he's 7th in routes run among tight ends. And he's getting a ton of targets. He's tight end 8 in routes per out run, tight end 1 in share of air yards. To me, he doesn't. And listen, I don't know anything. To me, he just doesn't look explosive.
Yeah. Is there a team? Do we have a big enough sample at this point where it's they're bad against the tight end, or there's so many variables and it's a small sample?
We're still early on. I think early on, a lot of these defensive stats are just opposing offensive stats this early in the year.
Yeah. There's a lot of bad quarterbacks, as there was towards the end of last year too, except it kind of carried over.
Also, Warren pointed this out to me this week. This is all-time low Vegas has setting the average game totals, ever through 5 weeks.
As a collective for a week.
On average, where game totals are being set.
It feels
all these things, yeah.
It feels like it when you look at the slate.
Philly, Jets, 41.5. Atlanta, Washington, 42.5. San Fran, Cleveland, 37.5.
And not just this week, up until from week 1 till now, it's collectively the lowest game totals we're seeing.
Why is that? I mean, why are
a number of reasons? I think there's a number of reasons the variables are going to it. Obviously, we're once again man coverage is down from the year prior, so we're seeing a lot less man coverage, less blitzing, still a lot of coverage based. Also, quarterback play just isn't as good, like Daigle said. And maybe we go back to these college systems, and a lot of the systems these guys are running, right? A lot of stuff near the line of scrimmage, get the ball out. We just don't have a lot of really good quarterbacks either. So there's a lot of variables involved.
I think knocking off the rust from lack of preseason play is also something, as week 1 totals have historically decreased as well. There's a whole lot of things baked into it.
7 billion people in the world. They can't find 32 people that are really good at this.
Not enough.
Dude, they brought in every time a team brings in Ian Book for a tryout, I just laugh. It literally cheers me up, because Ian Book was the one who literally changed the COVID rules. He had to start on Monday night for the Saints, and they said, okay, we're not testing anymore because we can't reach the point where Ian Book starts football games.
Is that the receiver for the Broncos, or is that a different thing?
No, it was the 25-year-old Notre Dame quarterback.
Who was the receiver for the Broncos that played quarterback? You know what I'm talking about?
That was KJ Hamler.
That's who it was. Yeah, that was. I mean, he gave his best effort. What are you going to do? It seems like a tricky position.
Yeah, I mean, imagine, dude. Has anyone even played amateur quarterback? It's the most ludicrous position to play. And they had a dude that was actually a wide receiver. He played some quarterback early in his high school career, and they just said in the NFL level, go out and play quarterback. And people are dogged on him. That was a Herculean effort for that dude even to be placed in that situation.
They literally just ran him and Melvin Gordon for the entire game.
All right. Do you want to mention
Absolutely insane though, but like, yeah, I mean, we live on in a universe where actually Kenny Pickett is one of the 32 best people at his job on the earth.
And everybody's like, "Oh, he sucks."
It's like
Except for
like
Cabley. Cabley thinks
and-
he's actually amazing.
and he definitely does suck. Except Cabley, yeah. Like on one hand, we have progressed because Carson Wentz doesn't have a job and Will Levis didn't go in the first round. So like we got there. But then the guys that are replacing them, we still have to eliminate. Like we still
I
need
should
to
use Zach Wilson, I guess, for that example.
Yeah. We still need to move on a little bit further, but we're getting there.
All right. Speaking of getting there,
but that's why there are like 5 good teams in the NFL. Like,
yeah, that's why it's not a great product. It's not a great product.
Rich and I both talked about, but we bet and play DFS, so it's just fine. And it pays my bills. Rich and I both talked about Calvin Ridley. I will say Christian Kirk is also a good play. And more importantly, if you want to pivot, if Trevor Lawrence stacks come in popular, which I'm fully expect them to, Evan Ingram is still very live as a pivot. Like at least 8 targets now in 4 consecutive games. Colts have allowed the 8th most catches to tight end. So if you're trying to play Trevor Lawrence, I still think that's a unique way to play him is by taking out one of Kirk or Ridley and just taking a chance on Ingram.
Let's see. In chat, maybe they played too deep. Yeah, I feel like we haven't seen any bombs anymore. Like, is the deep pass just like no longer a thing? Is that, I think defense is the focus more.
Did you see Dak try a deep pass against the Niners?
Yeah, the successful deep pass.
I wrote an article on this in the offseason. You guys can all check out that, like, literally that talks about like the history of like how we've gotten here, like the transition of the defensive meta and quarterback play and holding the ball and everything where we are.
Well, direct us to it. Let me know, or send me put it drop it in the chat, or put it in the YouTube comments or something. I'm curious to read it. But is that kind of what plays out? That are we getting less and less like big deep? I guess I should read for myself. You want to get those clicks?
Yeah, I mean, I can find it and put it in there. But yeah, I mean, I wrote about this though. Yeah.
All right. We paused. We've delayed enough. The people want us to talk about Friday the 13th. Again, participate in our contest, the Pick 6 contest. I believe if you participated already, you should probably get like a notification from DK. It's a recurring contest that just jump back in there. Last week I goofed and I created another one, and there was multiple contests going on at the same time. My bad. We won't be doing that going forward. It's going to say week 4 also. Ignore that. It's just going to be always week 4. Just pretend it type that. So yeah, it's going to be for week 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 going forward. You get yourself a month, not a week, a month free of RotoGrinders Premium of all the sports if you finish first, with the exception of NASCAR. And also how this works is that we assign the winner gets to assign everybody else some homework. You got to watch a movie. And last week the winner was John Daigle. John Daigle assigned us Friday the 13th. What's the final chapter? Yes, the final chapter.
It is the final, but not final chapter. Yes.
So let's play a game, and I think producer Rob's going to come in here at some point and talk about it as well. There's producer.
I was waiting for a grand introduction. I'm the only one who dressed for the occasion on top of everything.
It's a long season, Rob. You can only have so much standards for us. One day at a time.
And
Did
one
you celebrate Friday the 13th?
I have a show called Hometown Ghost Stories. Do you think I'd not celebrate
Friday? How does one celebrate Friday the 13th? Like, what do you do?
Well, you start a Friday the 13th marathon, and you just watch every movie every year, 2 to 3 times a year, until you can recite them line by line. It's a life. It's not for everybody, but it's for me.
That means you don't have triskaidekaphobia, right? I assume that means you can watch every single one of them without catching. So you enjoy what was 9, 10, 11? How many have they made so far in the series? There's too many.
There's been 12 Friday the 13th movies, which seems ridiculous, right? You have to make the 13th movie because it's Friday the 13th, but they have been tied up in court for years now over the rights to the Jason character in Friday the 13th. So they got stopped at the remake in 2008 or 2009, I believe, was the last one that was made.
I was wondering why we haven't seen one in a while. 2009. Does it bother you that they had a movie called Friday the 13th, the final chapter, released in April 1984, and they released Friday the 13th, A New Beginning, less than a year later? Yeah. The balls of them. They had to know they were making another one.
This is the most 80s thing of all time. So here's why they did this, right? So to give you some trivia, the movie that's been number one at the box office like the most consecutive weeks of all time was E.T.
Sure.
In the 1980s. The movie that dethroned that was Friday the 13th Part 3. So if you want like a little bar trivia, like you can throw that out there. It made too much money. This series was making too much money. They did final chapter. Everyone went. They were like, "Oh shit, we gotta throw another one of these out." And guess what? We don't even have to change the formula. We just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, and people are going to keep going. And they did.
It doesn't
throughout
cost
the entire
anything. There's clearly no budget in this movie.
There's no budget in any horror movie for the most part. Like it's very rare for a horror movie to get a budget. That's why they crank them out. That's why they make so much money.
Does E.T. hold up? I haven't watched it in like a decade.
Oh, I haven't watched it either.
All right.
The ride doesn't.
I never did. The ride is terrible. It's so slow.
I don't even remember the ride, to be honest. It's been
It says
so
your
long.
name at the end. Spoiler alert.
It does. And then of course, like if you're with your friends, like you just go in order and put dumb shit like Mike Hunt as your name and stuff like that.
So speaking of trivia, I pulled up the Rotten Tomato score on Friday the 13th, the final chapter. Rich, you go first.
Erroneous.
What do you think the critics said?
The critics?
Yeah, give me a percentage the critics put. It's only a 33 critic sample for what it's worth.
Space. So Jason X was comedically good, right? Like it's so bad that it's good. Okay.
Yeah.
So that probably had bad reviews, but this is supposed to be the best one. Like
what about the Jason Goes to Manhattan? Which one is that one, Rob?
The Muppets
Part 8. Part 8. So the fun. I mean, we don't have to go into all Jason trivia, but the best part about
I knew Rob would know. That's why I asked it.
The best part about the Manhattan one, where is they didn't have the budget to go to Manhattan, so they filmed all of it in Vancouver, and they had like a 1-day shot in New York City. That's why there's like that one scene.
He's in it for like 10 minutes, like actually in New York.
Yeah, that whole movie takes place on a boat. Like literally, and all the set pieces on land are in Vancouver, and then they had a 24-hour shooting in New York City. Amazing stuff.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So did anyone want to guess what the Friday the 13th?
I will say
final
18%.
Over or under, John?
Oh, I'll say over. If this is considered the best one, and there are some like noir vibes you get from it. Like I understood why people enjoyed it, who enjoy horror movies. I'll say over 50%.
No, this is a critic score, Daigle. So the critic score is going to be low. The critic score is going to be like probably 11%, 12% or something like
Got
that.
it. Okay.
The audience score, I bet, is in the 60s, though.
Yeah. I was going to say 69% for the audience. No pun intended.
So just a little side note, during COVID times, I would bet with a friend of mine, we would play the Rotten Tomatoes game. Somebody would set the number. We would bet over or under. This is how we'd pass time when there was no sports going on. But the critic score, 24% for Friday the 13th, the final chapter. The audience score, over 50,000 audience members, 51%. So they're split. The audience is split on Friday the 13th.
Also, Rotten Tomatoes is a terrible system because it's literally just a thumbs up, thumbs down ranking. So even if you think a movie is a 6 out of a 10, it gets a thumbs up and it gets ranked as like it registers as like everyone loving it.
Right.
Are you more of an IMDb guy as far as their like official?
Yeah, it's a lot more accurate in terms of that than the Rotten. It's literally a thumbs up, thumbs down system.
Yeah, it's fair. It's gladiator style, right? But I get it. In a lot of movies, you're kind of.
But you could have a movie that is 90% Rotten Tomatoes, but it's like a literal like 6.5 on IMDb.
Yes,
just because people are like, this isn't terrible.
It's just good enough to get the thumb up.
Yes,
but I'm never gonna watch it again. John, why do we pick? Well, why do we pick Friday the 13th? Was to celebrate Friday the 13th coming up, and producer Rob just kind of swayed you? You were just listening to this.
Because I was about.
Dean should have to pick a horror movie too.
I was about to select a Benicio del Toro movie, and Rob was on the show to surprise us because he was unhappy with our scoring system. And then he reminded us that his favorite holiday is Friday the 13th, and thus we should pick a movie for his favorite holiday. It was my week for winning. So that's why we got here.
And then you guys picked the perfect one because on my
Yeah.
show, we're recording for parts 3 and 4 this Friday. So it worked out perfect for me. So I had to rewatch it anyways. So it was a beautiful synergy there. We're just a
This
collective
movie
unit.
had Crispin Glover dancing.
Yes.
It had Corey Feldman.
Hilariously.
Like this was I haven't seen this movie in a long time. This movie was so 80s. It was just like it. I mean, I loved it because it was so 80s, man. It was. I get like why people, but I guess I'm nostalgic because I grew up like in that era of movies. It made me miss some of that goofy shit, man.
The gratuitous nudity as well. Like that was.
This movie's so horny. Oh, it's so horny.
Is there sex in like all the other Friday the 13th?
Oh yeah,
it was
I
like
assume it's a
all over the place.
It's the 80s, dude. Like someone always got killed boning. But this had the most egregious thing where it's just like the random girl that is the middle of the night that wants the skinny dip in like a frozen lake. Like just to get nudity.
Classic.
What could go wrong?
I have a note about that kill as well. He kills her by
this movie rule.
Yeah, it was a great kill that he stabbed her through the raft, but the raft doesn't deflate. The guy comes out like an hour later, and she's still just floating on the raft, and it's like he stabbed her from the bottom. Why is that?
Dude, someone gets harpooned in the dick in this movie.
Yeah. That was kind of enjoyable is that every scene is just a setup to the boss fight. Like every scene is a setup to a kill. And like all you're doing then, I imagine these YouTubes go crazy, Rob, YouTube videos, but there has to be like ranking system for all the Jason kills, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's all this was. I was like, which kill do I enjoy the most? I thought the most comedic was the one where he just tossed her out of the window and like left his arms flailing. It was just like saluting almost. It was like, yep, you're gone. And I was like, oh, that didn't take much. That one was pretty funny off the top floor.
There was somebody going through a window every 3 seconds in this movie. Just a slow motion window.
Glass is definitely always breaking in this film.
Well, I was going to ask you guys what you thought. Do you think that Jason killed the dog or the dog was escaping?
The dog escaped. The director has come out to let you know that the dog did survive this movie, just in case anyone wants to know. Because that is the most important thing in this movie, is to make sure that the dog is the one who survived over anybody.
No animals were harmed in the filming of this movie. But I like how I've never seen Friday the 13th 1, 2, and 3. But the movie just sort of like opens and you're right there. It's like almost like a previously on Friday the 13th. It's like, okay, I guess is that the last 3 ones?
You were the one last week who was worried about the chronology, like actually like losing the storyline if you skip to the final chapter.
There's no.
Why would he want to kill people?
Oh, so do you want to get into the motivation of Jason Voorhees on this show right now?
No, I'm sure it's a long story. Do we like it? Thumb up, thumb down, Rich? Do you want to give a tight end as far as your put a tight end on it?
We can give a score. We can give a score at the end.
I mean, do you want my system?
We got to talk about Crispin Glover a little bit more in this movie because is this not one of the most amazing performances in horror movie history? Just the neurotic nature of this character, just from the beginning, that ride in the backseat of the car where their heads are hanging out the back of the station wagon that has no window for some reason. Is that I don't remember that from the 80s. I don't remember the windows coming out of those things. Do you guys?
Allegedly, he's a really odd dude, and that kind of plays out in this role and every single role you sort of see him in. So it kind of checked out.
So we hit on the dancing scene, which, guys, if you're in the chat and you don't want to watch this movie, the one thing you do need to do is YouTube Crispin Glover Friday the 13th dance, because it's incredible. So
the woman was doing like the Elaine. The one he was dancing with, she was like kind of doing the Elaine from Seinfeld, was she not?
I think she was just trying to save herself. I don't know what you would do across from that. Yeah. So I have 2 fun facts about that scene. Apparently, that is really how Crispin Glover danced in nightclubs in the 1980s. That wasn't an act for this character. That is what he did.
Rick James, cocaine was a hell of a drug.
Second thing, the music that's playing is not what he was dancing to while filming. Does anyone want to guess what song he was dancing to during this scene? What was it?
I was just throwing out the Smiths. I don't know.
No. AC/DC Back in Black was the song that he's actually dancing to in that scene. So,
I thought one of the classic 80 moments as well was when Jason is stabbing him in the basement And so she runs up the stairs and out, and she keeps staring at the door, and no one has come out yet, but she goes back down into the basement. It's like, that's where you just were literally 5 seconds ago, but we're going back there without any music going on because, of course, this scene is not over.
Yeah, that whole scene is crazy because the hiker Rob that's there to kill Jason, who he has established was the killer of his sister from 2 days previous, which just timeline wise makes no sense.
It's
First
incredible.
of all, it's amazing. The only thing chronologically that goes along in these movies is Jason mask. They make sure that his marks are all there from like when he gets hit with axes. Everything else is like, you know, a free for all. But as he's killing the guy in the basement, he's just sitting there yelling, "He's killing me! He's killing me!" over and over again. Like, that is not what you would be yelling in the basement in that situation. It was absolutely incredible to see that improv acting go on in a Friday the 13th movie.
He just yelled it over and over and over again. It's like, yeah, we're
didn't
all
stop.
aware. We see the knife going into your ribs like every single time.
And to your point, she waits until he's actually dead to go back to help him.
Yep.
She's just standing there, and it's just like, this character makes like really weird decisions throughout the movie too. There's the whole scene where she's worried about her little brother, Tommy Jarvis, who is like, this is the start of the Tommy Jarvis trilogy. He's in the next 2 movies as well. Not as Corey Feldman. He ages 30 years over the course of a year. It's a whole thing. But she's really worried about what's going on with him. So her and the hiker go to find him. And as soon as they find him, they go, "All right, now wait here. We're going to go across the street and see if we can find Jason." It's like, you're leaving him in that house by himself. You don't think Jason can double back to this house? Why are we finding him and then abandoning him immediately, you idiot? So how do you guys not love 80s horror movies? They're the best. They're so bad.
I mean, it's you know, it's sort of a, don't ask too many questions. You have fun with it. Yeah, I wasn't like angry. I didn't love the movie, but like I get why it's campy, right? I get why people like it. I understand. And it's probably more fun. I watched it by myself. It's probably more fun with somebody else, I imagine, like a whole group of people. Like, it's like watching many years ago, we watched this movie called, you probably know this, Rob, Schlock. Remember, you ever see Schlock before?
No.
You're not aware of Schlock?
No.
It's like intentionally terrible. It's not good, but like it's so bad it's hilarious.
It's intentionally terrible though, or it was just bad because of the way they made it. I
wasn't in on the writer's room, but I like to think.
Have you seen The Room?
Yeah, that's the Tommy.
That's
was
the
out.
classic, intentionally terrible. Yeah.
So that wasn't intentionally terrible. That was supposed to be his real vision, and that's why it's so funny. He thought he was doing creative filmmaking. He had the scene on the outside where they're standing on the roof, where you have the natural light, the natural sky. He decided to put green screens up and use a green screen sky instead.
Hell yeah.
It's just like, it's read The Disaster Artist, the book, if you guys read books, or listen to the audio book. The making of that movie is insanity.
All right, so let's are we gonna put, John, what was your your thoughts as far as Friday the 13th Part 4, your movie? And I guess you haven't seen it in a long time.
I think we just summarized everything. I enjoyed it. So I'm grading it based on 1, my scale, and 2, I'm going to grade it compared to horror movies, which I don't watch a lot of, not compared to like an Oscar film. And so I gave American Animals 6.9, which may be too high, honestly.
I'm still mad at that movie. Still just I'm not necessarily mad at the movie. I'm mad at the real people still.
And
that's fair.
Based on the genre, I will give the final chapter a 7.1.
Whoa. You're grading on the horror scale though, right? You're giving, there's a curve there.
Based on the genre, I think it's a 7.1. Yeah.
All right. Do we have a tight end? No, it's your grade, man. I'm not upset. I was just kind of threw me off. That's all.
Yeah, Rich? I would give this a Jermichael Finley. Is it necessarily good? Maybe not. Eye of the beholder. But do you want to have a good time? Yes, you're gonna play Jermichael Finley.
Yeah.
I love the tight end scale, by the way. I also love that you all have your own different systems. So I'm going to stick with mine from my show, and I'm going to give it a 4.4 machetes out of 5 for this movie.
I'm sorry, is that machete or machete?
Machete? Like the knife that he uses?
Yeah.
Or sword?
Okay.
Knife sword?
Never forget that was a fake trailer in between Grindhouse in theaters when Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez released it, and then it became a movie because the trailer was so funny.
Oh,
Also
Daigle.
goes to space.
Yes,
Also, you remember the Thanksgiving trailer from that?
I do.
That comes out this year.
Oh, we need to
Yeah.
go. We need to go watch that. See, that's
What-
when you bring me on the podcast.
Listen, take
Okay.
more things to space that shouldn't be in space.
Yes.
That's
Thanksgiving.
what
Every space.
Was that Robert Rodriguez, right? I think his new movie. I'm pretty sure it's that new movie with Ben Affleck. You guys see that movie? You know what I'm talking about? I think it's him. Maybe I'm thinking of somebody else. The new Ben Affleck movie is terrible. It's on.
Sure.
That just came out. Yeah,
Always.
Hypnotic. It's not good. Dude, I'm not going to subject you guys to watching Hypnotic. I watched it on Peacock or something the other night. Affleck has some bangers, but it's not Hypnotic. I did not have, I had a couple movies I was sort of throwing out throughout.
No,
my
you have
head.
to give your you have
You
a
have to
letter
give your
grade.
score.
Oh,
Letter
okay.
grade.
Oh, I was thinking Anthony Fasano, but no, I got to put a number on it. Hold on a second.
No, you
How
do.
dare
You
you.
do. You did a letter grade
Well-
last week.
You're
Okay, yeah.
infringing my bit.
All right. Well,
yeah.
you think of your number. I'll give one more piece of trivia. Also, I'm with Brandon in the chat where part 6 is the absolute best. I think I'm also a big fan of part 6 of this series. Last piece of trivia. Do you guys remember the workout video in the beginning? The
Yes.
doctor's watching.
Yes.
One of the girls from that workout video ends up getting cast in part 6. So a
Oh.
little bit of
Nice.
But this is part. What part
4.
is this?
4.
4.
Four.
Okay.
Yeah.
The final chapter.
The final
But
chapter.
as you said, they advanced 30 years and the timeline's all over the place.
It makes no sense. It's like
Okay,
it's
good.
literally the next year, but Tommy Jarvis is now 30 years old, or at least he looks it. It's
Awesome.
crazy.
Incredible.
Insanity.
I'll give it for campiness and for nostalgia, and it's probably more fun to watch with other people. I'll give it like a C-. You know,
And Dean,
I'll give it a
remember
C.
when movies would just be 80 minutes long?
Yeah.
You guys
Remember
remember the world? Remember the
That was
world where you could just get in for 80 minutes?
Why don't you just at Christopher Nolan while you're at it? That's just. You do not like those 3-hour epic
I mean,
movies?
listen, I'll sit for a 3-hour movie, but I was like, when I was like, oh, this movie's over already? Like,
Yeah, I watched Oppenheimer, but will I watch Oppenheimer ever again? Probably not.
I've still not seen it. I guess I'll have to
It-
wait until it comes out on home theater or whatever. But
Is
I'm
it worth the
definitely gonna see
watch? Is
Yeah.
it worth the one watch?
I've seen it twice.
Okay, you've seen it twice. I don't think I'm gonna watch it again. It feels like a documentary, which is not a bad thing. It just definitely feels
Right.
like a documentary.
Dude, Downey's so amazing in that movie.
He is good. Yeah.
I heard
Okay.
I heard someone describe it that like you forgot that Downey has champagne in the fridge because he's been serving you wine coolers the last 20 years as Tony Stark.
was he the star, Robert Downey? Is he the star of
No.
Oppenheimer or no?
No.
He's not, right? Okay. It's like the cast is insane, right? Like,
Yeah,
is everybody
they're
in
all
it?
gonna win.
Oh, yeah.
I would be surprised. And I mean, maybe the Scorsese movie has a nice push here for people getting nominated. But I imagine there's gonna be a lot of awards won.
Well, you want to talk about our 20-minute movies? Like, yeah, the Scorsese. I haven't looked it up, but it has to be 3.5 after
Oh,
we had
yeah,
the
easy.
after we had the Irishman last.
Dude, The Irishman has like the worst scene I've ever seen in a movie in my entire life, though.
Dude, I
Which
had
scene?
to. I just part the Irishman. Although I did enjoy it, I had to watch it over 2 days just because I was like, man, I can't do this. Like, I can't watch a 4-hour movie in one sitting. That's insane.
The scene I was referring to is when he beats up the guy in the street. Like that fight choreography, go back and watch it. It is awful. De Niro looks terrible. And it's all it looks, I'm a giant wrestling fan. Like this is not like if you saw this at a wrestling match, you would leave. That's how bad it was. And how it actually made it into the movie, I have no clue. How it didn't
Anytime
do
you-
some sort of alternate shot or something.
Anytime you see something like that, just always go back and watch Heat. Heat never fails you. It's always there to comfort you in your lifetime.
I actually watched that scene they are in a diner when they're talking to each other. from Heat, just occasionally, like once or twice
It's
every
beautiful.
few years.
It's beautiful.
You know
I
that
don't
scene
want to
wasn't.
derail. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, real quick. Did you know that scene wasn't supposed to be in the movie?
No, really.
So they wrote this movie and they started filming it and they realized that they didn't have a scene with De Niro and Pacino in it together. So they wrote that scene during production of the movie just so they could have them together on screen.
And now they're filming Heat 2 because, like, I think the book is a New York Times bestseller. I haven't read it yet, though.
Why? Gladiator 2, Heat 2, why? Why?
You guys are going to watch the Iron Claw. I'm fairly certain of that. If you're wrestling fans, yes, Rob.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
I will.
the trailer dropped today. I figured you'd be into it.
I won't want. I try not to watch trailers at all. I try to go into everything as blind as possible now. I did that with the movie Barbarian last year. It's a horror movie, and
I saw it.
I went into that I didn't know what it was about. I thought it might be like a period piece or something with the title. And I enjoyed it more because I didn't know what to expect.
I did that with Pan's Labyrinth, Guillermo del Toro's Pan's
Great
Labyrinth.
movie.
I knew nothing about it, and I walked out thinking that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. And with Parasite, I had no idea. And boy, when you get to the second hour of that movie, you're like, oh, this is what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Pan's Labyrinth.
I saw Parasite in the
Pan's Labyrinth's
theater.
incredible. I did too.
The people applauded. They applauded at the end of the movie. You ever have
It's
that? Where people applaud? The entire theater applauded.
Outside of like comic book movies, Inception got an applause. I stayed in my seat after Inception because my brain was fried. I was like, I don't know what I just watched, but I need to watch it again.
Both spectacular, Inception and Parasite. All right, now this just became like a movie podcast. The people, they've stuck with us for almost 2 hours. We do appreciate you guys hanging out with us. I have to assign a movie. I had a list of movies that I was thinking about assigning. Dewey Cox was one of them, but it's not streaming anywhere, which is just a fun movie. I was thinking I should do something fun, but then I went back to like, oh, let's not do something fun, but let's do something that's like kind of a thriller and a mystery, and it's not a fun movie at all, but it's a very good movie. Well, I have The Outfit. I had The Drop. Has anybody seen? This is one of my favorite hidden gems on Netflix. Has anybody seen Calibre?
No.
It's Scottish.
Machete.
Oh boy, my video just cut on me. I don't know if you guys can see me or not. It's not Machete or Machete. There's no Danny Trejo is not in it, but it's a Netflix movie, and I assume most people have the Netflix. I don't want to make anybody pay for anything. Have you seen A Simple Plan with Billy Bob Thornton? Have you guys seen that movie?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
with Sam Raimi, Sam Raimi finest.
It's a very Sam. Was Sam Raimi also American Beauty?
Spell it out.
No.
Spell it Calibre out for us in the chat and the listeners, because I just Googled it just to get a cover image, and it took me to ebook software. So
Calibre. It's one of my favorite.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite hidden gems on the Netflix. It's kind of, sort of, somewhat like A Simple Plan. If you've seen A Simple Plan, I assume somebody's seen that, so that's why I didn't assign that. The Billy Bob Thornton classic. Where just kind of like one bad decision sort of leads to like a snowball of a disaster, that kind of thing. But I like the hidden gems. I didn't want to go with something super obvious, but most people probably haven't seen this. I almost went with Big Fan. Have you guys seen Big Fan starring Patton Oswalt? It's a football movie.
I have. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's a Quantrell Bishop is the star linebacker or so for the Giants. It's an interesting movie, but I thought the people would be. I don't know why I went with this one, but this is what we're going with, I suppose.
I will watch and listen along as you guys review.
I think Rob's made himself part of this segment of the show now.
Producer Steve,
I'm not coming on. I'm just saying I'm going to watch and I'm going to listen. I'm not jumping in again. Maybe again later in the season. But
yeah.
No.
And are you going to partake in the listener league? You're a part of the listeners, right? Are you going to partake in the listener league? Shenanigans.
I want to give everyone else a chance to win, Dean. I don't want to come in there and just ruin that thing every week.
If you win, we'll pick the next person. How about that? So you could still partake, and you're allowed to play. And if you happen to win, the next person will get a free month of RG Premium. Does that work out for you?
All right, I'll jump in. I'll jump in this week and I'll take it down.
Hey, Rob, tell the people where they can find you. I know we're going to get the plugs out of the way. And since you're here, you have all sorts of plates you're spinning. You have your podcast. I assume that Friday the 13th, you'll be live streaming you watching all the Friday the 13th movies. Give them the socials. Where can they find you?
Well, you can find me on Hometown Ghost Stories. It's a podcast, or it is also a YouTube series. I would suggest starting with episode 98. We just had Shelby from Scare You to Sleep do our opening story, and it is one of the most incredible narrations I've ever heard in my life. So if you want to hear a scary ghost story that I wrote that Shelby reads, it's incredible. Check that out. We will be doing Friday the 13th part 3 and 4 reviews on this Friday. That'll be dropping. You can catch me over at Spike Week if you're into best ball. I am one of the main hosts there. I am more talented and more handsome than Eric Beimfor, so make sure that you are looking for me and not him on that. And where else can you catch me? On RotoGrinders. I'll be on the Sunday show this Sunday for RotoGrinders on Crunch Time. I do everything, man. You got to stop pigeonholing me, Dean, and saying that I'm producer Rob. I am multi-talented, handsome Rob, or something like that is the way I would
said
go
you
with
spin
this.
a lot of plates. That implies you're doing a lot of different things.
You are top 150 in the World Series of Poker, Rob.
I did that too.
Yeah, that was this year, by the way.
Yeah, that was a few months ago. I finished 138th in the main event. That was great. Yeah. I enjoyed that. So
you're the next world's most interesting man. The second he has to ever rebooting those that series, you're going to be getting a call for sure.
I'm
trying.
Rob, tell the people. No, Rob. John, tell the people where they can find you.
At 4for4.com. If you're in the redraft streets, it is 33% of the way through the season. So we have a big discount on sale for everyone right now. I do the waiver wire. I do another DFS show on Friday. I'm in the Discord all the time for start sit questions. And speaking of, I am seeing the high stakes bids come in now. So before you kick it to Reeves, just to let you know, Amari DiMercato, $556 I'm seeing as a high bid. So 55% of fab. And Deontay Foreman, $248, 24% of fab. And I'm seeing Sky Moore, 119. I dropped him. So someone else picked him up for 119. And then, some like Sam Howell's 187 because, at least Sam Howell, his next 3 games, Falcons, Eagles, Giants, all pass funnels. And by the way, because if you're a subscriber, you know this because I mentioned in the waiver column, but click next week on your team and just make sure you have bye weeks covered because next week's a 6-team bye week. And I know that because Rich and I get to breathe finally. But you need to check your fantasy team and make sure you don't have all week 7 because you may need to pick up players early right now to get ahead of next week.
But there are no buys in week 8, which is also Halloween is Tuesday. So I obviously write up every game of the week. So I have children that still partake in the Halloween festivities. So
but you are grateful.
I appreciate the NFL doing no bye weeks in week 8 on Halloween night when I have to now carve out hours to go trick-or-treating, which I want to do, but it would be cool if the NFL gave me fewer games. And it's the first time they've done this where they don't have teams on bye in the middle of the year. And it's really stupid. Thanks a lot, NFL.
And just wait till we get to Black Friday game after Thanksgiving.
Jesus Christ. And Christmas is ruined this year. I got to ask Rob what he thinks of. We're doing a promo on the site, and you can go to sharpfootballanalysis.com or follow at Sharp FB Analysis. We're doing all Halloween promo stuff, and the first one came out today, and it was actually Friday the 13th with Warren's mustache on the thing. I didn't know if Rob approved of it or not, but see what he thinks about that. I've got one coming out with me. I'm going to be Nev Campbell on the Scream poster. But if you do head over to Sharp Football Analysis, if you like the worksheet, you can use code SLASH for 79% off everything.
I need to see this Nev Campbell Rich Hribar poster.
I haven't seen it either. Eddie's making it the guy behind the scenes, but the Warren one is out at Friday the 13th. It's on the tweet streets at Sharp FB Analysis right now. If you check that out,
I'll go gander. But if this Nev Campbell poster is great, I might have to put it on the wall here somewhere.
I have a very Nev Campbell build right now too. That's
what I was thinking. She might be in Scream 7. She might need a stunt double. Just call up Rich Hribar and he'll take care of it.
You have a Nev Campbell build, but we're still never changing the cover image of this show. We need old Reebs on there all the time.
Unshaven, a little bit heavier. But we got to take care of that. Maybe
It's still my boy Reebs.
We'll clean it up for sure. We do appreciate you guys hanging with us. Do hit that like button. Do subscribe. Do turn on notifications. Do everything. Hit all the buttons. Join the Listener League so you too can win yourself 1 month free of RG Premium. On behalf of Rich and John and producer Steve and producer Rob and poker playing Rob and Halloween podcast Rob, we do appreciate y'all listening. Enjoy the rest of the week. Take something down. We're out of here. Holler.